The official timeline of human history is neat but flawed. Across the globe, colossal anomalies defy explanation. The precise geometry of the Great Pyramid, the ancient batteries of Baghdad, the maps detailing pre-glacial coastlines. These relics aren't just ruins. They are evidence of a sophisticated, forgotten past. Did our ancestors truly rise from simple beginnings? Or did a high civilization collapse, leaving cryptic puzzles? Step away from conventional archaeology and explore the disconnect between what we are told and the astonishing proof etched into our world. Prepare to rethink the dawn of civilization. For centuries, the Palestrina mosaic, an enormous mosaic masterpiece located in the ancient town of Praeneste, modern-day Palestrina, Italy, has stood as one of the greatest enigmas of Roman archaeology. Unlike typical Roman floor mosaics, made simply to decorate villas or honor deities, the Palestrina mosaic goes far beyond all conventions. It is too large, too intricate, too layered with meaning, and strikingly similar to a conceptual map encoded by people deeply familiar with ancient Egyptian culture. Its level of detail is so astonishing that even veteran scholars cannot stop asking who created it, why did it appear in Italy, and what was its true purpose. What do you think the Palestrina mosaic was truly created for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Palestrina mosaic opens up a world so vivid, it almost surpasses the boundaries of traditional Roman art. Spanning an enormous surface, it recreates the Nile with an extraordinary micro-level precision. Crocodiles hiding among the reeds, hippos half submerged in the water, and ibises gliding over lotus ponds, each element carved with astonishing delicacy. Further beyond, groups of people in Egyptian attire perform rituals with a mystical aura surrounded by temples, fortresses, and ancient structures rendered stone by stone. What is striking is how every scene connects into a single continuous narrative, as if the artist was conveying a sequence of knowledge or a secret ceremony. The ecological accuracy and deep understanding of the Nile's environment suggest that the creator was not merely copying imagery, but had direct exposure to or profound study of Egyptian landscapes far beyond the superficial Egyptianized trends in Roman culture of the time. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Palestrina mosaic is the complete absence of any historical record about its creator. No artist's name, no workshop, no patron, an absolute void that makes the work seem as if it emerged out of nowhere. This vacuum has sparked numerous theories. Some scholars argue it was crafted by Greek artisans, given the slight Hellenistic influence in its technique. Others believe Roman craftsmen made it for a community devoted to the goddess Isis. And there are even bolder claims suggesting the mosaic might be a copy of a lost Egyptian masterpiece, or the result of a far broader cultural exchange than we currently understand. This total lack of traceable origin is precisely what makes the Palestrina mosaic one of the most enigmatic anonymous artworks of the ancient world. Another large mystery lies in the mosaic's strange hybrid content. Roman mosaics typically focus on a single theme, battles, gods, domestic life, or decorative patterns. But the Palestrina mosaic breaks all rules. It blends religion, geography, biology, and mythology into a dreamy yet symbolically heavy composition. One section clearly depicts a Nile ritual for the god Hapi. Another looks like a geographic visualization of the Nile's flood cycle. Elsewhere, figures appear alongside ritual symbols that do not align precisely with any known Egyptian records. This raises the suspicion that the mosaic is not depicting real Egypt, but rather an Egypt imagined through the spiritual worldview of Roman mystery cults, especially those devoted to Isis or linked to Hermetic traditions. The mystery deepens because of its fragmented history. In the 17th century, much of the mosaic was damaged or destroyed during renovations of the building above it. What survives today is a mixture of original fragments and 18th century reconstructions. no one can confirm which sections are genuinely ancient and which were guessed by later artisans. Thus, the Palestrina mosaic resembles a torn cultural manuscript, a book with missing chapters. Ironically, this incompleteness only increases its allure. The less we know, the more we want to uncover what might have been encoded within it. All paths lead to the most important mystery. What was the Palestrina mosaic used for? This question has fueled scholarly debate for centuries without any consensus. The most widely accepted theory suggests that the Palestrina mosaic once served as a ritual map inside a temple dedicated to the goddess Isis, rather than merely a decorative artwork. In this interpretation, the entire Nile scene is arranged as a sacred cycle: rising waters and receding waters, seasons of birth, death, and rebirth, reflecting the core beliefs of ancient Egyptian religion. Every animal, every structure, and every group of figures in the mosaic may symbolize a specific stage within this cycle of life. In this way, the mosaic becomes a visual altar, a space where devotees could walk in, follow the layers of symbolism, and immerse themselves in rituals invoking abundance, fertility, and spiritual renewal. Some modern scholars believe that the Palestrina mosaic may have been a kind of visual encyclopedia in the ancient world, created to record and convey knowledge about the Nile's ecosystem to Roman elites who were fascinated by Egypt. The mosaic compiles everything from landscapes and animals to architectural structures and human activities, much like a scientific lecture rendered through imagery. However, its extreme level of detail, each animal depicted with precision, each scene reflecting direct observation, pushes it far beyond the typical scope of an educational tool. This very over-perfection makes the theory less convincing and adds yet another layer of mystery surrounding the mosaic. The most controversial theory suggests that the Palestrina mosaic does not depict Egypt as a real geographical land at all, but instead represents the esoteric cosmology of secret cults devoted to Isis or aligned with Hermetic tradition. In this interpretation, every group of figures, every animal, and every symbol carries carefully encoded layers of mystical meaning, from the movement of water and the cycles of life to the soul's journey back to its divine origin. Thus, the mosaic is not merely decorative art, it becomes a cosmological diagram used in esoteric teachings or initiation rites. This theory helps explain many of the mosaic's oddities: hybrid compositions, animals inconsistent with nature, architectural forms that never existed, and especially the strange appearance of an Egyptian spiritual map right in the heart of ancient Italy. Regardless of which theory is correct, the Palestrina mosaic remains profoundly enigmatic. What survives is not merely an artwork, but the remnant of an ancient worldview, a vision of Egypt that existed not in books, but in the minds of those who created it. And the question, what was it used for, remains unanswered to this day. Perhaps like many ancient mysteries, the Palestrina mosaic was never meant to be fully decoded. Perhaps it exists as a reminder that entire systems of knowledge, ritual, and belief once flourished, systems that modern humanity can no longer fully reach. Located in southwestern Spain, Rio Tinto is one of the most mysterious and debated archaeological regions in Europe. On the surface, it appears to be just an ancient mine with bright red mineral seams stretching for kilometers. But when looking deeper into the geological layers, tunnels, and mining traces hidden beneath the thick earth, Rio Tinto reveals a completely different story. A land that has been continuously mined for more than 5,000 years, passing through the hands of the Tartessians, Phoenicians, Carthaginians, and Romans, yet still containing a deeper, secret layer, one whose original builders remain completely unknown. Who do you think was the very first civilization to reach Rio Tinto? And why did they disappear without leaving any trace behind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Red River of Rio Tinto is one of the most mysterious natural phenomena on Earth, where the water carries a deep blood-red color created by oxidized iron mixed with sulfate minerals continuously released from underground. The environment is so acidic that almost no life should survive, yet extremophile microorganisms have persisted here for millions of years, using minerals as their energy source instead of sunlight. This almost alien ecosystem is why NASA considers Rio Tinto a natural analog of Mars, a place to study the possibility of life on other planets. Even more intriguing is the idea that this red color may have been much lighter in the distant past. Some studies suggest that ancient deep-level mining disrupted long-buried ore pockets, releasing sudden concentrations of iron and sulfates into the water, intensifying the striking red hue we see today. When archaeologists descended deep into the ground beneath Rio Tinto, they uncovered an ancient network of tunnels built with a level of precision that seems almost impossible for prehistoric technology. Many tunnels stretch for tens of meters, yet remain nearly perfectly straight, barely deviating from their axis, despite the miners having no underground maps, no angle measuring devices, and no modern orientation tools. The rock cuts are uniform, the corners sharply carved, and the tunnel walls unusually smooth, suggesting a refined mining technique far more advanced than expected. Some sections even include natural ventilation systems, indicating a sophisticated understanding of airflow in enclosed spaces. When the Romans arrived, they expanded these tunnels into small underground cities, yet Roman records themselves admit that the deepest passages had existed long before their arrival. But who carved those tunnels, and why did they vanish without leaving behind a single trace of cultural identity? One of the most striking discoveries at Rio Tinto is the presence of metallurgical layers that appear much earlier than the officially recognized Bronze Age of the Iberian Peninsula. In the oldest soil strata, archaeologists found charcoal copper slag and traces of primitive furnaces buried unusually deep, suggesting that an organized form of metalworking existed in the distant past. What's even more perplexing is that their dating does not match any known civilization, such as the Tartessians or the Phoenicians. The chronological gap is so large that it raises a provocative question. Could there have been an unknown metallurgical community possessing ore processing techniques thousands of years ahead of its time? If so, this might force history to reconsider the very beginning of Europe's metallurgical development. The minerals found at Rio Tinto deepen the site's mystery even further. Beyond copper and iron, the area contains pyrite, covalite, chalcocite, and rare crystal forms with unusual shapes, sometimes bent or folded in ways rarely seen in nature. Some mineral samples even share chemical signatures similar to those found in meteorites, prompting experts to question the strange geological conditions that created them. Although no scientist has claimed that Rio Tinto has an extraterrestrial origin, many acknowledge that its mineral properties resemble those of planetary surfaces more than any other place on Earth. This leads to a bold hypothesis. Did the ancient miners recognize these unusual features, and could that be why they dug deeper than any civilization of their time? Yet all these oddities are still not the greatest mystery. The deepest layers of Rio Tinto contain no inscriptions, no pottery, no tools, nothing to identify the people who once worked these mines. Only smooth rock walls, long straight tunnels, and mineral veins stripped of their richest metal content thousands of years ago. When researchers dated the altered rock, they discovered signs of mining older than any recorded civilization in Iberia. This gave rise to a highly controversial theory: a vanished unknown civilization may have operated underground here long before written history began. Many researchers have attempted to explain the origins of the deepest tunnels in Rio Tinto, yet no theory has proven truly convincing. Some argue that these structures were created by prehistoric nomadic miners, but this simple explanation cannot account for the extraordinary depth and near-modern precision of the tunnels. Others lean toward the idea of a highly developed indigenous community that left no writing or cultural artifacts, causing them to be erased from history. More daring studies propose that Rio Tinto may once have been a strategic mining center of a civilization that vanished after a major environmental or catastrophic event. Some scholars push the theory even further, suggesting that this site might have been a link in a larger, possibly global mining network belonging to a prehistoric civilization that we have yet to identify. The deepest tunnels of Rio Tinto remain the greatest challenge for modern science. They are incredibly ancient, yet unusually clean, with straight lines and logical layouts that cannot be attributed to instinctive prehistoric mining. No known Iberian culture possessed the ability to dig tens of meters deep without leaving crude tool marks or directional errors. Even more astonishing, modern mining experts note that the precision of these tunnels is nearly equivalent to Roman engineering standards, despite being dated thousands of years older. This unnatural perfection raises a haunting question: who built them, and with what kind of technology? And this is the question that makes Rio Tinto one of Europe's greatest archaeological mysteries. If the Tartessians didn't do it, the Phoenicians didn't do it, and the Romans weren't the first, then who descended into the deepest tunnels of Rio Tinto? No artifacts to name them, no cultural traces to describe them, no surviving legends to recall them. All that remains is evidence of a sophisticated mining system far beyond what we expect from its era. This is why many archaeologists call Rio Tinto the ancient mines of ghosts, a place where we see the work but never the workers. Even decades from now, Rio Tinto will continue to challenge our understanding of the past. It is not merely an ancient mine, it is a doorway into an unwritten chapter of human history. A chapter suggesting that humans may once have known more, achieved more, and built structures that still cause modern experts to whisper in astonishment. Amid the endless rainforests of Papua New Guinea exists one of the most mysterious forms of primitive art on the planet, the Papua Asmat wood totems. These are not merely decorative wooden poles, but the crystallization of spirituality, tribal history, and secret carving knowledge passed down through generations. The Asmat people have long been regarded as masters of wood carving, standing far above neighboring tribes, even though they share the same living conditions, the same rainforest environment, the same primitive tools, and the same resources. So what allowed them to develop an artistic style that seems almost otherworldly? What do you think allowed Asmat art to surpass all the surrounding tribes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Asmat people's woodcarving art is striking for its elongated forms, stacked human figures, and distorted faces rendered in a near-surreal style. Every carved line carries encoded ancestral symbols, forming a visual language only the tribe truly understands. What astonishes researchers most is the sharpness and refinement they achieve using nothing more than stone axes, animal bones, and seashell tools. These primitive instruments somehow produce delicate, even deeply cut lines with exceptional aesthetic quality, far beyond anything seen in neighboring tribes. This stark difference raises an enduring question. Where did such mastery originate? Could the Asmat be preserving the last surviving traces of an ancient artistic tradition that once flourished brilliantly but has since vanished from history? Asmat totems are far more than works of art. They serve as bridges to the spirit world. The Asmat believe that their ancestors remain present, watching over them, and need a home to reside in. Thus, each totem represents a specific ancestral spirit being called back, personalized rather than symbolic like other totemic traditions. Some totems were erected after crucial rituals, especially those tied to the spiritual balancing of the tribe, including the once famous practice of headhunting. This explains why many Asmat totems portray real people and real stories, rather than gods, carrying strong ritualistic energy that can feel overwhelming to outsiders. One of the most astonishing aspects of Asmat totems is their use of extremely soft woods, such as mangrove and balsa materials that usually decay rapidly in Papua's humid climate. Yet many of these totems have survived for centuries, seemingly unfazed by the harsh environment. This has led researchers to believe that the Asmat possess secret wood preservation techniques that they have never shared with outsiders. Some theories suggest they soaked the wood in special tree resins, dried it through multiple stages aligned with seasonal wind cycles, or performed purification rituals to seal away harmful spirits. However, no one has ever successfully replicated the process, leaving the durability of Asmat totems as an enduring and unexplained mystery. One of the strangest phenomena in Asmat culture is the complete disappearance of several giant totems that anthropologists recorded between the 1930s and 1950s. These towering wooden pillars, several meters high, densely carved and charged with powerful ritual energy, were described in great detail at the time. Yet when research teams returned decades later, every one of them had vanished without a trace. Local villagers either remained completely silent or simply said the totems had been returned to the ancestors as if they were never meant to stay in the world of the living. Some theories suggest that the Asmat hid them deep within untouched forests. Others believe the totems were ritually destroyed when ancestral spirits no longer wished to remain. The silence of the Asmat people, combined with the empty spaces where these carvings once stood, only deepens the mystery and makes it even harder to unravel. The greatest mystery surrounding the Asmat people does not lie in the shape of their totems or in their rituals, but in a far more challenging question. How could a tribe living under the exact same conditions as their neighboring groups develop an artistic tradition so extraordinarily advanced? There is no evidence that they ever interacted with any highly developed civilization, yet their carvings display a level of abstraction, symbolic complexity, and visual structure far richer than that of other Melanesian tribes. Some scholars believe the Asmat may be descendants of an ancient maritime culture that once thrived along distant island chains before disappearing due to climatic upheavals. Others think the Asmat might have inherited techniques from a long-lost guild of master carvers that dissolved centuries ago. Another theory suggests that the Asmat mindset itself, deeply symbolic, strongly abstract, and spiritually oriented, created an isolated artistic world that evolved inward, driven more by spiritual depth than by practical needs. Whichever explanation is true, all perspectives point to one conclusion. Asmat art is no coincidence, but the surviving trace of a tradition that developed far beyond the usual patterns of human culture. A more spiritual anthropological explanation suggests that Asmat art flourished because it served as a ritualistic tool, not merely decoration. The Asmat believe they must maintain balance between the living and the dead, and to do so, they need powerful symbols, carvings strong enough for spirits to recognize and respond to. This pushed their art into deep emotional expression far beyond naturalistic representation. They carved what they saw in ritual visions, not what they saw with their physical eyes. The mystery intensifies when researchers find no evidence of unique cultural exchange between the Asmat and neighboring regions, meaning their artistic superiority did not come from outside influence. Many scholars, therefore, consider Asmat art an independent phenomenon, a cultural anomaly similar to the Egyptian pyramids or the Easter Island moai, appearing suddenly without clear predecessors. Another theory from cultural psychology suggests that Asmat artists traditionally carved while in altered states of consciousness during rituals. Artisans, often also shamans, reportedly followed visions sent by ancestral spirits. Colonial-era accounts describe carvers working non-stop for hours, as if guided by something beyond themselves. While unproven, these accounts reinforce the idea that Asmat art may come from a ritualistic mental process few other tribes performed. Some scholars note that Asmat lands' dense mangrove swamps full of natural danger may have shaped their artistic culture. In such an environment, symbolic objects helped alleviate fear and strengthen identity. Totems became spiritual shields, and thus artistic creation rose to a cultural priority. Despite countless theories, none fully explains Asmat artistic mastery. The Asmat still keep many of their wood-carving secrets, hidden past only through sacred chants and oral tradition. Their art forms a closed world where every cut on the wood holds a story, a spirit, a meaning that only they understand. That is why the Papua Asmat wood totems remain one of humanity's most beautiful mysteries, an artistic phenomenon that defies logic, a remnant of a long-lost tradition, and proof that even small cultures deep within the forest can possess creativity beyond modern scientific understanding. Amid the mist-covered slopes of Mount Lawu, a strange stairway alignment rises straight into the sky, so impossibly straight it looks like an ancient blade carved into the mountainside. It resembles nothing from the Majapahit world we know. From afar, the entire structure appears like a colossal stone needle driven from the earth all the way into the clouds. And as you set foot on those silent steps, only one question echoes. Who built this stairway alignment? And what message were they trying to send to the future? No ancient texts, no builder's name, only a precision far beyond its time, challenging the history we thought we understood. What do you think who built this stairway, and why? Share your theory in the comments below. From the very lowest terrace, one can sense something unusual. The stairway of Cetho is not merely a path, but resembles a ritual. It climbs step by step, terrace by terrace, as if imitating a spiritual ascent from the mortal world toward the divine. Every platform and every step lies upon the complex layers of Mount Lawu's terrain. Yet strangely, the stairs remain almost perfectly straight, as though measured with modern instruments. Considering the Majapahit era of the 14th to 15th century, with labor-based construction and simple tools, such precision is extremely difficult to explain. Modern surveys reveal that Cetho's main axis is not perfectly straight as it first appears. Instead, it is made of multiple stairway segments that twist slightly, each deviating by only a few degrees, too subtle for the naked eye to notice. Yet when all these segments are aligned together, they converge precisely toward a single point, at the summit of Mount Lawu, a place ancient Javanese people believed to be a gateway to the divine realm. This deliberate design has led researchers to suspect that the builders were not merely constructing a temple, they were calibrating the architecture to harmonize with the terrain, natural energy lines, and perhaps astronomical phenomena we have yet to decode. When researchers compared the Cetho stairway alignment with the movement charts of the sun and moon, they discovered something astonishing. Many of the stairway's straight angles align perfectly with the sun's trajectory on the summer solstice. This becomes even more puzzling, considering that Cetho has no surviving observation tower or astronomical records of any kind. The alignment is so precise that scholars suspect the stairway may once have functioned as a time-measuring instrument similar to the stone calendars of the Maya or the ancient Egyptians. But if it was truly designed for astronomical purposes, why is there no clear observational structure at the top of the axis? This unanswered question only deepens the mystery. From the third to the seventh terrace, visitors encounter numerous large stone slabs cut at identical, slanted angles. Without mortar and without crude joint lines, these stones fit together as if they instinctively knew where they belonged. Considering Mount Lawu's wet, steep, and hazardous conditions, how could ancient builders transport, carve, and precisely position these stones. Some scholars suggest this may be evidence of a lost construction technique far more advanced than what the Majapahit people are believed to have possessed. Scattered throughout the terraces are carvings depicting distorted human faces, half-human, half-beast creatures, and symbols that do not match ancient Kawi script. They do not resemble typical Hindu or Buddhist Javanese art. This leads to a persistent question: was Cetho truly built in the Majapahit era, or was it constructed upon the remnants of a much older civilization, later restored by those who came after? One of the most suspicious details is that many stairways lead to flat platforms, with no shrine at all. These empty terraces seem as though they once supported important structures, now entirely vanished, or perhaps were never completed. Some archaeologists boldly suggest that Cetho may be only a fragment of a much larger complex, extending down into the valley or deeper into the jungle. But to this day, no excavation large enough has been carried out to confirm this possibility. Despite undergoing multiple reconstructions, especially in the 14th and 15th centuries, Cetho still bears characteristics that are not purely Majapahit. This suggests that the ancient builders may have inherited a mysterious structure from much earlier times, something they did not fully understand, yet preserved for its spiritual importance. The absence of ancient text inscriptions or precise dating prevents us from knowing who truly designed the original stairway alignment. Because of these unusual features, Cetho enters its deepest layer of mystery. No one knows who designed this stairway alignment, and no one understands its true purpose. Every theory only touches a tiny fragment of the truth, as if the entire structure is deliberately hiding a secret that history never recorded. The first theory suggests that the Cetho stairway alignment may be the legacy of a vanished pre-Hindu civilization, one that existed long before the Majapahit era. The distorted carvings, the unclassified symbols, and the layout, seemingly aligned with Mount Lau's energy lines, lead many scholars to believe this was more than a temple. It may be the surviving trace of a community possessing knowledge far beyond its time. A culture that could have been erased from history, leaving behind only silent fragments we still cannot decode. The second theory proposes that Cetho may in fact be an astronomical observatory disguised as a temple. The stairway angles that align with the sun's solstice path, the repeated slanted stone cuts, and the near-perfect precision suggest that the ancient builders were trying to record the sky using stone. But this only deepens the mystery. If Cetho truly functioned as an astronomical structure, why has no observation building survived? Did the most important part of the observatory disappear over time, or was it designed in a way we still do not understand? The third theory, and the most dramatic, suggests that the Cetho stairway was never meant to be the final destination, but rather a ceremonial road leading to a structure that has now vanished. At the summit of Mount Lau, there may once have been a supreme temple, an ancient observatory, or even a stone gateway to the heavens where the human world and the supernatural were believed to meet. Many scholars think this structure was destroyed by earthquakes, landslides, or erased slowly by time itself. If this is true, then what we see today is merely a small surviving fragment of a far greater complex one, whose most important part has already faded into oblivion. All theories are compelling, yet full of contradictions. There is no decisive proof, no ancient documentation, and no clear technological explanation. Only the stairway remains rising into the sky, silent, across centuries, guarding a secret no one has yet uncovered. Perhaps this is what makes Cetho one of the most mysterious ancient structures in Southeast Asia, a stairway designed by an unknown hand, possibly Majapahit, possibly a long-lost people. A structure that appears simple, yet hides knowledge beyond our understanding. A corridor of stone that is simultaneously ceremonial, astronomical, and spiritual, but whose true purpose remains unknown. Even today, standing among the drifting clouds of Mount Lawu, looking up at the straight stone steps ascending into the mist, we still cannot answer Cetho's greatest question: who created this stairway alignment, and why did they build it? Across the bone-dry deserts of Somaliland, where life seems impossible, lies a place that forces history itself to admit defeat. Laas Geel. Here, inside small, unassuming rock shelters, appear ancient paintings so vibrant they seem to defy time, bright, sharp, and astonishingly alive, despite thousands of years under the unforgiving desert sun. They are not merely artworks. They feel like messages left behind by an unnamed civilization that vanished without a trace, leaving only sacred cattle, enigmatic rituals, and pigments that refuse to fade. No tools, no villages, no artifacts, nothing but these deliberate haunting strokes on stone. It is as if the site is asking a question humanity still cannot answer. Who left these marks in a land that appears empty? Who do you think truly created the Laas Geel paintings, and why did they disappear? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The dating of Laas Geel remains one of the most challenging puzzles in African archaeology. Current estimates range from 5,000 to more than 11,000 years old, leaving researchers unable to pinpoint a definitive timeline. What makes this even more perplexing is that the artistic style of Laas Geel far surpasses what one would expect from early pastoral communities. If the highest estimates are accurate, then these anonymous artists lived when the Sahara was still a lush grassland filled with rivers and large wildlife. This temporal dissonance makes Laas Geel feel like a fragment torn from the archaeological map, suggesting that we may be looking at traces of a culture far older than regional history has ever recorded. What makes Laas Geel truly extraordinary is the mystery behind its colors, which seem almost untouched by time. In an environment where extreme temperature shifts and constant sand abrasion should have erased all organic pigments thousands of years ago, the vivid reds, oranges, and yellows still glow as if painted only decades earlier. Researchers suspect that the ancient artists used a mixture of minerals combined with a unique biological binder, yet the exact formula has vanished entirely from history. This suggests that they possessed a pigment-making technique so distinctive that modern science still cannot fully replicate it, a technology created by a community whose identity remains completely unknown. The artwork at Laas Geel challenges all known artistic patterns of the Stone Age. At the center of most scenes are cattle with exaggerated heads and elongated necks adorned with ornaments, collars, and ribbons. They do not resemble any natural bovine species. They are sacred cattle. Human figures bow, kneel, or raise their hands in clear ritualistic poses. Faces are simple, but body posture speaks unmistakably of worship, devotion, and reverence. This suggests that cattle were not only sustenance, but the foundation of a belief system, a religion centered on fertility, life, and prosperity. The paintings are surprisingly sophisticated. Clothing, necklaces, pottery, belts, every detail is rendered with unusual precision, unlike the simplicity common in rock art of the same era. This raises a crucial question. How could a culture that left behind no tools, no architecture, no settlement remains, produce artwork of such advanced quality? Were they more developed than archaeology currently allows, or has the rest of their civilization been lost, buried, destroyed, or undiscovered? Another paradox lies in the environment. Today, the area is too arid to support a large community. Yet the paintings depict vigorous life, cattle people, pastoral activity. This implies two possibilities. The region was once far greener, or the people of Laas Geel came from elsewhere using the site solely as a ritual sanctuary, not a settlement. Even stranger, there are no traces of habitation, no stone tools, no hearths, no pottery fragments, no ancient villages. It appears they came only to paint, perform ceremonies, and then depart. Equally mysterious are the depictions of pregnant women holding children or standing beside cattle, suggesting a strong, fertility-centered belief system. It appears that human life and cattle life formed a sacred unity. Many scholars believe these people regarded cattle as totemic beings, embodiments of divine or cosmic forces. The greatest mystery of Laas Geel does not lie in its enduring pigments or its unique artistic style, but in the deeper question, who created all of this? Every piece of archaeological evidence leads to an unsettling void. There are no settlements, no tools, no pottery fragments, no human remains, nothing that proves the presence of a community living near the site. Only the paintings remain, like the final whispered message of a vanished culture. Some scholars believe the artists belonged to a pre-Afro-Asiatic population existing before the major language families of East Africa emerged. Others argue they were pastoral migrants from the north, possibly connected to prehistoric Mesopotamia or the Nile Valley. Another theory suggests they were an extinct cultural branch, once possessing pigment-making techniques and artistic knowledge that the modern world cannot fully replicate. The boldest hypothesis proposes that Laas Geel may represent the remnants of a small but remarkably advanced society, refined in its art, yet too limited in population to survive drastic climate change. What makes the mystery even more haunting is that despite these theories, none of them can be proven. Beyond the vibrant paintings, they left nothing behind, as if this civilization passed through the Somali desert in a brief, brilliant moment, only to disappear completely from human history. Laas Geel is like an echo from a distant past, evidence of a society sophisticated enough to form beliefs, skilled enough to create extraordinary art, and mysterious enough to leave no trace behind. A small but possibly remarkable civilization, wiped clean by time, leaving only brilliant rock paintings as proof they once lived. Even today, standing inside the small caves of Somaliland, looking at the still-burning reds and oranges after 5,000 or 10,000 years, one cannot help but wonder, are we looking at the final message of a civilization that vanished completely? A civilization with no name, no language, no continuity, only sacred cattle watching over humanity, like a reminder of how many chapters of human history remain unwritten. And those unwritten chapters are precisely what make Laas Geel one of Africa's greatest mysteries, one that may survive for thousands more years until humanity finds the truth, or accepts that some civilizations are lost forever, leaving only their art on stone as their final farewell. Hidden deep within the wild, untamed forests of Oyo, Nigeria, a place where even archaeologists rarely set foot, lies a site that forces history to question itself, the Oyo megaliths. No written records, no surviving legends, no trace of any culture that might have lived here. Only massive stone pillars, standing silently arranged in patterns so precise that they hardly seem like the work of a prehistoric society. They are not pyramids, not temples, not any kind of stone circle known to the world. The Oyo megaliths resemble a hidden network of structures designed by a civilization that vanished long ago, leaving behind nothing but these stubborn stones that refuse to reveal their story. And it is this total silence that turns the Oyo megaliths into one of West Africa's most perplexing mysteries, a place where the longer you stare, the more you feel as if you're standing before the ruins of a world history deliberately chose to hide. Who do you believe built the Oyo megaliths, and why did they vanish? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Archaeologists who approach the Oyo megaliths are often struck by the almost unbelievable geometric precision of the structures. Many stone slabs are arranged into long, perfectly straight alignments, not deviating even by a single degree, as if measured with modern instruments. Other clusters form near-perfect right angles, something even technologically advanced civilizations of the same era rarely achieved. What makes this even more perplexing is that the ancient communities in this region did not use the wheel, had no angle measuring tools, and historical records do not indicate any advanced architectural or mathematical traditions. Because of this, the presence of such precisely arranged stones, seemingly calculated in advance, leads many scholars to believe they could not have been random formations. Instead, they hint at the possibility of a lost system of knowledge, or perhaps even an ancient West African civilization with a far more advanced level of understanding than history typically acknowledges. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Oyo megaliths lies in the massive size and weight of the stone blocks. Many slabs weigh several tons, yet they stand upright or are stacked in ways that could not have occurred naturally. Strangely, the area surrounding the site shows no trace of transport pathways, no drag marks, no animal tracks typically associated with hauling heavy loads, and no evidence that the people of the region possessed any form of mechanical technology. Even more astonishing, some of the stones have been identified as originating from sources tens of kilometers away, raising an even bigger question: how did ancient people move them to this location? Primitive levers, sheer manpower, or was it a technique that disappeared along with the civilization that built these enigmatic structures? Another oddity: there are no Yoruba legends from the people native to the region that mention the Oyo megaliths, no myths about ancestors building them, no stories about ritual use, no tale of a king commanding their construction. This total silence has led many anthropologists to conclude that the Oyo megaliths were not built by the Yoruba, but by a pre-Yoruba culture that vanished before recorded history. If so, then these are the remains of a completely unknown civilization, one that left no cultural artifacts except for upright stones standing quietly in the forest. The true purpose of the Oyo megaliths remains one of the most perplexing questions in archaeology, largely because no cultural traces whatsoever exist to guide interpretation. There are no burials, no pottery, no ritual objects, no human remains, and no recurring architectural pattern that could provide clues. Some scholars propose that the site may have functioned as a solar observatory based on the alignment of certain stones with solstice sunrise and sunset. Others view it as a ceremonial complex, a territorial marker system, or even a vast astronomical map encoded through the placement of the stone pillars. But the challenge is that no single theory explains the entire system, since each stone cluster presents a different layout with no shared blueprint. This has led many researchers to consider the possibility that the Oyo megaliths may once have been a multifunctional system, serving several purposes simultaneously, or perhaps even a form of architecture whose meaning modern human thinking is simply not equipped to fully comprehend. One of the most astonishing phenomena at the Oyo megaliths is that some of the stone pillars produce metallic resonant tones when struck, similar to the ringing stones found in Asia and South America. This suggests that the stones were not randomly selected, but may have been chosen for their special mineral composition, or even shaped intentionally to create acoustic resonance. This phenomenon leads many researchers to believe that the builders must have had a certain understanding of materials, knowing how to identify stones capable of producing sound. Yet the purpose behind this remains entirely unclear. Were these stones used in ritual music for long-distance signaling, or perhaps as an early form of acoustic measurement? So far, no theory is strong enough to fully explain this mystery. One aspect that makes the Oyo megaliths even more mysterious is the fact that many of the stone clusters align precisely with the positions of sunrise and sunset during the summer and winter solstices. Such accuracy is unlikely to be accidental, especially considering that the ancient communities in this region were never recorded as possessing advanced astronomical knowledge. This suggests that the builders may have observed the sky for generations long enough to create an early solar calendar used to mark seasons, rituals, or important cyclical events. This level of precision has led many archaeologists to believe that the creators of the Oyo megaliths possessed astronomical understanding far beyond what history attributes to them, and that the site may once have served as a significant skywatching center for a vanished culture. All the unanswered questions surrounding the construction techniques, transportation ability, astronomical knowledge, and the true purpose of the Oyo megaliths ultimately lead to the greatest mystery of all: who built this structure and what civilization did they belong to? What puzzles archaeologists is that the surrounding area shows absolutely no signs of any settlement, no houses, no cemeteries, no artifacts, no villages, no animal bones from long-term habitation, and not a single symbol motif or form of writing. Even determining the age of the site is extremely difficult, since the stones cannot be directly dated, and nearby sediment layers offer very limited information. Researchers currently discuss three main hypotheses. The first proposes that the Oyo megaliths were created by a pre-Yoruba civilization that disappeared due to climate change or large-scale migration. The second suggests they were the work of a specialized group of stonemasons or ritual practitioners who lived separately from surrounding communities and vanished when their cultural tradition ended. The third claims the site may be a product of multiple construction phases layered over time, though this conflicts with the consistent materials and architectural style found throughout the site. Finally, there is a bolder theory, often mentioned by alternative ancient history researchers, that the Oyo megaliths may be the legacy of an entirely unrecorded West African civilization, one with astronomical knowledge, stoneworking skills, and organizational abilities, far more advanced than what current history acknowledges: a civilization that vanished completely, leaving nothing behind except silent stone pillars standing deep in the forest. To this day, the Oyo megaliths remain largely ignored by the media, rarely studied by archaeologists, and almost completely unresearched. This neglect only deepens the mystery. The Oyo megaliths seem to remind us that African history and human history contains vast, empty spaces. It is entirely possible that hidden beneath these stones lies the story of a lost civilization, a chapter erased from humanity's memory, waiting for someone to rediscover and rewrite it. In the sun-drenched region of Puglia, Italy, where white stone paths lead into green valleys, there exists a cluster of structures that at first glance appear to be nothing more than small rustic houses. Yet the more one studies them, the deeper one is drawn into a maze of unanswered questions. These are the Trulli cone-shaped, domed houses, built entirely of stone, stacked without mortar, without cement, without any binding agent at all. Their structure is almost laughably simple, yet astonishingly sophisticated. A building technique that seems purely peasant-like, but carries the imprint of something far older, deeper, and far more mysterious. What do you think lies behind the strange origin of the Trulli domes? Are they simply peasant houses, or the remnants of an ancient, forgotten building technique? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The dry stone construction technique of the Trulli is one of the features that astonishes researchers the most. The entire structure is built from local limestone. Yet the true marvel lies in how ancient builders locked the stones together using only gravity and an almost mechanical level of precision. Each stone was selected based on its size, fracture direction, weight, and flatness, then placed into gradually rising circular layers that formed a completely self-supporting system without a single drop of mortar. This meticulous engineering allows the Trulli to withstand strong sea winds, sudden temperature shifts, and even mild seismic activity without collapsing. Even more mysterious is the fact that this technique was never documented, as if it were a secret orally transmitted skill preserved only within a small community in the Puglia region. The conical dome of the Trulli is perhaps the feature that baffles archaeologists the most. Instead of using beams or any internal framework, ancient builders created the roof using concentric rings of stone, each ring narrowing as it rose. When the final ring locked into place at the top, the entire structure became a perfectly self-supporting dome, distributing weight evenly down the walls without any additional reinforcement. What is truly astonishing is that this technique is almost identical to prehistoric dome construction found in Malta and Cyprus regions, with evidence of human settlement dating back thousands of years before the Common Era. The fact that a rural medieval community possessed such advanced mechanical understanding raises a profound question. Where did this knowledge come from? Why does this building technique not appear anywhere else, but only in Puglia? And could this be evidence that the Trulli are not medieval at all, but rather the surviving remnant of a much older architectural tradition that predates recorded history? The white lime symbols painted on the roofs of the Trulli are among the most puzzling mysteries associated with these structures. They are not mere decorations, but appear to form a deliberate system of signs: stylized crosses, radiant suns, crescent moons, six-pointed stars, spiral motifs, and even ancient astrological symbols. Many researchers believe these markings represent a blend of early Christian beliefs and older local pagan rituals that predate Roman influence. Some symbols resemble protective talismans or clan identifiers, functioning like an architectural code understood only by members of the community. The more scholars analyze them, the stronger the belief grows that these markings once held deep ceremonial meaning. Yet over time, all knowledge needed to interpret them has completely vanished. The thermal regulating ability of the Trulli continues to astonish modern experts. From the outside, they appear to be simple stone huts, yet inside, they function like sophisticated climate control systems. The walls are built in two layers, an outer layer exposed to sun and wind, and an inner layer that retains temperature. The hollow space between them acts as a natural insulation chamber, allowing continuous airflow. The floor is designed so that moisture from the ground rises just enough to cool the interior during summer. The conical dome also plays a crucial role. Hot air rises to the top and escapes through tiny gaps between the stones, creating a stable circulation loop. As a result, the interior remains cool, even during 40-degree summers, and noticeably warmer during winter. What puzzles researchers most is this: how could a medieval farming community develop such an advanced form of natural air conditioning, when even modern architecture rarely employs a system this efficient? A well-known local legend says the Trulli were built without mortar so they could be quickly dismantled when tax inspectors arrived. Residents could collapse the dome within minutes, turning the house into a pile of stones and avoiding property taxes. But this story raises another question: why would an entire region adopt one single architectural style merely to evade taxes? And more importantly, is it really easy to dismantle such a complex dry stone dome, which requires years of skill to construct? Clusters of Trulli stand tightly together in honeycomb-like formations, forming unified, almost mysterious settlements that appear to follow deliberate planning. No two Trulli are exactly alike, yet all share a common architectural language. Their roof finials, called pinnacoli, are unique stone ornaments placed at the peak of each dome, serving almost like a secret signature. Some are spheres, others cylinders, crosses, or strange undeciphered shapes. Some researchers consider them markers of family identity or even spiritual symbols whose meanings have been lost. But the deepest, most controversial mystery of the Trulli lies in one central question. Are the Trulli really just medieval peasant houses, as official history claims, Or are they far older, so old that recorded history simply oversimplified their origin? More and more archaeologists and historians are beginning to question the timeline traditionally assigned to the Trulli, as multiple pieces of evidence appear to contradict the idea that they are merely medieval structures. First, the dry stone dome technique existed across the Mediterranean as far back as the Neolithic period, suggesting an ancient architectural tradition rather than a late invention. In addition, the double wall design with an air cavity used for natural temperature regulation is almost entirely absent from medieval European buildings, yet it is common among prehistoric structures adapted to harsh climates. The symbols painted on the roofs of the Trulli also show striking similarities to the religious motifs of the Nuragic Mycenaean and Phoenician cultures, hinting at a much deeper cultural connection. Most puzzling of all, no medieval text records the origin or early use of the Trulli construction method, as though the entire knowledge system had been erased before history began documenting it. All of this forces scholars to confront a difficult question: are the Trulli truly as young as we've been told? Some scholars believe the Trulli may represent the last surviving branch of an architectural tradition thousands of years old, preserved by local communities through generations. If this theory is correct, the Trulli are not ordinary rural houses at all. They are the final echoes of an architectural system that once spread across the Mediterranean world. An intriguing hypothesis suggests that the Trulli may be the late remnants of a long-vanished pre-Roman civilization. This civilization is believed to have possessed advanced knowledge of local climate, limestone behavior, and stone balancing technique skills that a typical medieval farming community would be unlikely to develop on its own. As that ancient society declined, much of its knowledge may have disappeared with it, surviving only as folk skills preserved within a few isolated communities. This rupture in cultural continuity is what makes the true origins of the Trulli so obscure, like an ancient memory buried beyond the reach of recorded history. And so the greatest question remains suspended in time. If the Trulli are truly older than believed, then who built the very first domes, and why did they vanish, leaving the technique behind, but not the story? There is still no certain answer. Only the silent stone domes standing for centuries under the Puglian sun, as if guarding a secret humanity has not yet become wise enough to understand. Deep within the forests of central Java, on the western slope of the mist-covered Mount Lawu, stands a structure that gives almost everyone the same first impression: it looks like nothing else in Southeast Asia. This is Sukuh, a strange stone pyramid with a truncated shape, ancient, isolated, and almost as if a fragment of a different civilization had fallen onto Java. Although often attributed to the late Majapahit Empire, every stone, every carving, and every relief at Sukuh hints at a far more complex and ambiguous story. A story of religion rituals, astronomy metallurgy, cultural collapse, and most importantly, about a mysterious group of builders who vanished completely from history. Who do you think truly built the Sukuh pyramid, and why did they disappear without leaving a trace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first striking element is its stepped pyramid architecture, a style almost non-existent in Asia. While Hindu and Buddhist temples in Java were typically built as Meru towers, tiered mountain forms, or ornate spires, Sukuh instead uses a truncated pyramid resembling the Maya pyramids at Chichen Itza or the ceremonial platforms of the Andean cultures. Despite no evidence of transoceanic contact, this resemblance has puzzled archaeologists for decades. How did a Mesoamerican-like structure appear in Java during the 15th century? And if it wasn't Majapahit, could it have been built by a much older indigenous civilization? Not only is the architecture unusual, but its design language does not match Hinduism at all. There are no traditional statues of Vishnu or Shiva. No intricately carved walls like those of Prambanan. No Majapahit-style Paduraksa gates. Instead, the stones are cut plainly straight, almost megalithic, the kind of construction typically found in prehistoric sites thousands of years older. Sukuh feels raw and solitary, as if it were born in a time before Java had writing kingdoms or organized religion, when rituals were still rooted deeply in primal fertility beliefs. Inside the complex lies something even more astonishing, a series of large fertility ritual reliefs. These do not merely show the Linga Yoni symbols, they present them in amplified, explicit forms that modern scholars still debate. Scenes of birth, fertility, soul rebirth, and ritual intercourse appear throughout the site. Everything suggests an ancient religious center where people celebrated life, death, and regeneration through some form of esoteric fertility cult, completely different from orthodox Hindu traditions. Some archaeologists believe Sukuh may represent the last remnants of an indigenous religion that existed long before Indian influence spread across the Indonesian archipelago. Around the temple stand several strange stone statues. Headless figures, distorted warriors, human-animal hybrids. These artworks do not match Majapahit aesthetics and do not correspond to any known Indonesian artistic tradition. They look like the products of a completely different mindset, rough, primal, symbolic. This has led to speculation that Sukuh was not a newly built site, but instead a structure constructed atop much older foundations belonging to a culture long lost. Among the strange reliefs of Sukuh, the most frequently discussed is the depiction of a metallurgical machine, a stone carving showing a large gear, a workbench resembling metalworking equipment, and a figure appearing to operate it. In the context of a Hindu temple, the presence of such a detailed mechanical structure is almost impossible to explain. Some scholars argue that it is merely a symbolic representation of blacksmithing, a profession considered sacred in ancient Javanese culture. However, others note that the lines of the gear, the suggested motion, and the overall layout of the machine are far too specific, far beyond the typical style of symbolic imagery. This raises the question of whether Sukuh once served as a center of metallurgy, or whether its original builders possessed a level of technical knowledge far more advanced than we currently understand. One of the most enigmatic aspects of Sukuh lies in its astronomical orientation. The pyramid's main axis points directly toward the sacred Mount Lawu, as if the entire structure was built to communicate with the mountain. Beyond that, several secondary features align precisely with the position of the solstice sunset, indicating long-term observation and a significant understanding of the sun's movement. Some stone steps even resemble primitive observation platforms. All of this suggests that Sukuh was not merely a place of worship, but may have functioned as a proto-observatory where ancient people tracked celestial cycles to support fertility rituals and measure the rhythm of life. Its art is ancient, its rituals ancient, its architecture ancient. Yet Sukuh is dated to the 15th century, far too late to match its primitive appearance. The Majapahit Empire was flourishing at that time, producing highly refined and ornate structures. So why would a Majapahit period temple be built in a style resembling a prehistoric monument? Could it be that Majapahit only restored or completed the structure while the core architecture belonged to a civilization from a much earlier era? Within the complex are sealed underground passages. Several stairways leading into dark spaces have been closed off with stone and ancient mortar. No record explains where they once led. Some researchers believe these led to secret ritual chambers or storage areas for sacred objects. Others speculate that they might have connected to a subterranean route toward Mount Lawu, used for high-level ceremonies, but no definitive answer exists. The passages remain sealed to this day. Across the temple grounds are signs of heavy destruction, shifted stones, decapitated statues, slabs bent in the same direction. This could have been caused by a major earthquake warfare, or as some scholars suggest, intentional destruction meant to conceal or end ancient rituals. The greatest mystery of the Sukuh pyramid does not lie in its strange reliefs or its Mesoamerican-like shape, but in the core question: who truly built this structure and why did they vanish without leaving any trace in history? Although modern documents often attribute Sukuh to the late Majapahit period, archaeological evidence repeatedly contradicts this. The architecture of Sukuh bears none of Majapahit's characteristics. Its artistic style is entirely foreign to Javanese Hinduism, and its fertility rituals feel far more primitive than the culture of the 15th century. The distorted statues, headless figures, metallurgical carvings, and astronomical alignments all point to something older, possibly the remnants of an ancient indigenous culture that existed long before Java entered its Indianized era. Many scholars propose that Majapahit may have arrived later, repairing or completing the upper layers, while the foundation's ideology, rituals, and astronomical functions belonged to people who had lived in Java thousands of years earlier. This older culture seems to have understood solar and lunar cycles, worshipped fertility and rebirth, practiced metalworking, and built megalithic structures, all suggesting an organized, complex community that left behind no texts, no lineage, and no written history. The most unsettling part is not what they built, but that they disappeared completely. No legends, no records, no evidence of migration. Only a solitary pyramid standing on the slopes of Mount Lawu like a fragment of memory from a chapter of history we never knew existed. To this day, Sukuh continues to challenge archaeologists how many civilizations lived and died on Javanese soil before recorded history began, and could Sukuh be just one of countless clues still hidden within the forests of Lawu? On the green hillside of Andhra Pradesh, India, the Unavali caves stand silent, like a colossal riddle carved into solid rock. Although located near the gentle Krishna River, this structure carries an aura of mystery so strong that many researchers have called it an unclaimed monument of an invisible civilization. There is not a single inscription, not a single record, not a single direct clue revealing who the true creators of this enormous complex were. Even more astonishing is the level of craftsmanship far beyond what we believe the 4th or 5th century could have achieved. Because of this, Unavali has become one of the most controversial archaeological sites in South India. Who do you think truly built the Unavali caves, and why did they leave no trace behind? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Upon entering the first level, one immediately notices something unusual. The entire complex is not a natural cave, but a single block of sandstone hollowed out, forming 4 deep levels. The first level resembles a Buddhist monastery, with broad columns and evenly spaced small chambers. The second level shifts into long, deep corridors with flat ceilings, something nearly impossible to achieve with hand carving unless precise architectural planning existed. The third level features a massive reclining Vishnu statue, about 5 meters long, carved directly into the rock floor. And the fourth level, the most mysterious, contains sealed silent chambers with no clear signs of use, no carvings, no decorations, as if they served a purpose that history has deliberately concealed. Even stranger, the architectural styles of all 4 levels are completely inconsistent, as if multiple religions and traditions used this place over time. Some features show strong Buddhist influence, Vihara meditation rooms. Others reflect Hindu elements, especially Vishnu and Narasimha, and some details resemble the Jaina tradition known for small, silent meditation chambers. This raises a major question: if the complex was built in a continuous process, why such diversity in styles? And if different groups built it over time, Why are all the chisel marks identical, as if only one team with one unified technology carved everything? Looking closely at the technical details inside the Unavali caves, researchers are increasingly astonished by features that seem almost impossible for a structure carved entirely by hand in ancient times. Many stone pillars are perfectly straight, with crisp square edges rarely seen even in more famous rock-cut complexes. The long corridors run in perfect parallel, as if measured with modern instruments rather than ropes and iron chisels. The walls are smooth and flat, their surfaces resembling cuts made by a wide-bladed tool, something not recorded in the technology of that era. Most impressive of all is the reclining Vishnu statue, carved in a dark, narrow space, yet displaying flawless proportions, natural curves, and refined anatomical details that even modern artisans would struggle to replicate. One of the mysteries that sets the Unavali caves apart is their astonishingly sophisticated system of ventilation and indirect lighting. Many inner chambers lie deep within the structure, with no openings to the outside, yet they still receive just enough natural light to see clearly. This suggests that the builders not only understood the direction of sunlight, but also knew how to create precisely calculated vents and light shafts. Several openings were placed at very specific angles, allowing light to bounce through 2 or even 3 rooms without losing too much intensity. This arrangement resembles the deliberate application of optical principles rather than random observation, raising the question of whether the ancient builders possessed knowledge far beyond what is typically attributed to their time. One of the most debated aspects of the Unavali caves is the evidence suggesting that the entire structure may have been carved during a single construction phase. Researchers expected to find variations in carving style, patched areas, or layout changes that would indicate multiple generations of craftsmen. Instead, from the lowest level to the highest, the chisel marks are almost perfectly identical, the same force, the same direction, the same depth. This raises the astonishing possibility that a single team of artisans possessing exceptional skill and extraordinary organizational capability completed the entire project in one unified effort. Another bold theory suggests that the caves may have been fully created by an elite group of ancient craftsmen, perhaps even a lost civilization, while later communities merely reused the structure without altering it. The more scholars investigate, the deeper the mystery becomes, leading to the central question, the one that makes Unavali one of the most enigmatic complexes in India. This question is deeply controversial and touches a shadowy corner of history. Based on mainstream understanding, the Gupta or Vishnu-Kundina era during the 4th century to the 5th century did not possess the technology to carve 4 uniform levels, create perfectly flat walls, carve deep chambers with indirect lighting, or sculpt massive statues with such precision. But if not them, then who? Amid the many theories surrounding the origins of the Unavali caves, the 3 most prominent explanations are also the 3 that make the story even more perplexing. The first theory suggests that Unavali may have been built by Buddhist monks around the 2nd century, during a flourishing period of rock-cut monasteries. However, the layout of Unavali does not align with traditional Buddhist architecture. Several shrines lack the characteristic chaitya forms. The meditation rooms do not follow typical monastic patterns, and most notably, the presence of a reclining Vishnu statue, a feature entirely foreign to any early Buddhist structure, renders this theory unconvincing. The second theory points to a Jaina origin, proposing that Unavali may initially have been a meditation center for an ancient Jaina community, later modified by Hindus. Yet the technical sophistication of Unavali far surpasses anything known from Jaina cave architecture. Jaina sites are renowned for their small, minimalist, contemplative spaces, completely unlike a multi-level complex with deep corridors, massive pillars, and monumental sculptures. This stark difference in architectural capability makes the Jaina theory difficult to support. The boldest theory comes from modern archaeologists who propose that Unavali may have been the work of an elite guild of itinerant craftsmen, the same type of master builders who appeared at Ellora Udayagiri or Badami. Although more plausible, the central question remains unanswered. How could a group of ancient craftsmen armed only with hammers, chisels, and experience create 4 levels of caves with near-perfect precision, machine-like flat walls, and a lighting system so sophisticated that it challenges modern engineering? No matter which theory one follows, each only opens new mysteries instead of solving the core question: who were the true original builders of Unavali? The uniformity of the chisel marks is a huge problem. If multiple generations worked on the caves, differences in tools, skill, or style should be obvious. Yet Unavali looks like the work of one team created in a single time frame, requiring enormous labor organization never documented in Undra's ancient history. Some modern architects say, to create a structure like Unavali by hand, you must be able to read stone, like reading blueprints, layer by layer, fracture by fracture, plane by plane. This exceeds the abilities of Gupta period artisans. Others argue that the smooth walls resemble cuts made by wide metal blades or mechanical grinders' tools, completely unknown in ancient India. The final questions surrounding the Unavali caves continue to perplex researchers, as every hypothesis leads to major gaps in historical understanding. Some scholars wonder whether the site might be the last remnant of an ancient civilization that has never been documented. Others lean toward the idea that Unavali was built by a group of master craftsmen whose advanced techniques have since been lost. There are also theories suggesting that the caves once served as a secret religious or scholarly center, preserving knowledge far beyond its time. Regardless of which explanation one favors, scholars agree on one point: the construction techniques of Unavali are extraordinarily advanced, making this complex one of India's greatest archaeological enigmas. Amid the mist-covered mountain peaks of Mon State, Myanmar, lies a mountain that locals call Kiaiktio, meaning the rock touched by the Buddha. And on top of this mountain, in a place where any modern engineer would say construction is absolutely impossible, stands a phenomenon that has astonished humanity for centuries: the Kiaiktio Pagoda Foundation Rock, commonly known as Golden Rock. A massive boulder covered in gold leaf, weighing hundreds of tons, touching the mountainside with a contact point smaller than a human palm. Yet for thousands of years, it has remained still unmoving, defying every known law of physics. What do you think has truly kept this rock from falling for thousands of years? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first feeling one experiences when standing before the Golden Rock is absurdity. You see a boulder so massive it could crush anything if it fell yet. From a distance, it looks as if it is floating in mid-air. A single strong push seems enough to send it tumbling down a cliff more than 1,000 meters high. And yet the strange truth is, it never falls. Through storms, rain, wind, and even mild earthquakes in Myanmar, the boulder remains upright, as if some invisible force is holding it in place. The Myanmar people believe this is because of a strand of the Buddha's hair placed inside the small pagoda built on top. According to legend, this sacred hair grants the boulder its miraculous balance. Because of this belief, the Golden Rock's surface constantly glows under the light, covered by layers upon layers of gold leaf placed by devotees, praying for blessings. The gold becomes so thick that the entire boulder resembles a miniature sun at sunrise, creating a scene both spiritual and surreal. Yet the story of Golden Rock does not end at religious devotion. Archaeologists, geologists, and engineers have all come here, and every one of them has had to admit this rock should not exist in this position. There are no anchoring systems, no cement, no metal fasteners, no artificial structure beneath it. The contact area between the boulder and the mountain is so small that even shifting its center of gravity by a centimeter or two should send it crashing into the deep valley below. This raises a question that has persisted for centuries. How can such a boulder remain standing? Many scholars have attempted to explain the golden rock phenomenon with the perfect center of gravity theory, suggesting that the entire boulder just happened to rest on a uniquely balanced point. But when its real geometry is analyzed, this idea quickly becomes fragile. The underside of the rock is not uniform. It is uneven, twisted, and curved like a distorted half-sphere. Such an asymmetric structure is almost impossible to naturally achieve stable equilibrium. This inherent irregularity makes it even harder for scientists to believe that the golden rock stands firm, purely because of natural balance. Some geologists believe that beneath the tiny contact point, there may exist a natural hollow or a uniquely shaped depression that helps keep the boulder in place. However, because golden rock is an extremely sacred site, all forms of drilling, probing, or sample collection are strictly forbidden. This leaves scientists with almost no data to verify any hypothesis. No geological maps, no structural scans, no depth surveys, nothing. As a result, they must accept that the mystery of golden rock remains as untouched and unexplained as the very first day it was discovered. One of the most perplexing aspects is that the golden rock appears almost immune to earthquakes. Although Myanmar lies within an active tectonic zone where tremors are strong enough to shake modern structures, this massive boulder weighing hundreds of tons barely shifts, if at all. Many visitors have tried pushing it with considerable force to test its stability, yet the rock remains completely immovable. What deepens the mystery is that from certain angles below, the golden rock looks as though a light touch could send it rolling off the cliff. This stark contradiction between its seemingly fragile appearance and its actual solidity makes the phenomenon even harder to explain, defying conventional physical models. However, the greatest mystery of all is the question, why does the boulder not fall? This is the question that has troubled generations of scholars, with at least 3 major theories proposed. The first theory suggests a perfectly balanced center of gravity, but proving this would require precise measurements of the boulder's geometry and mass, something impossible due to religious restrictions. Thus, it remains only a theoretical possibility with no experimental confirmation. The second theory suggests that the golden rock rests on a natural stone socket formed by thousands of years of erosion, similar to how a small pebble can remain stable in a shallow depression. However, observations of the rock's underside show no evidence of a cavity deep or solid enough to support such an enormous weight. This lack of supporting data makes the natural socket hypothesis difficult to uphold when compared with what is actually seen. The third theory, and also the most controversial one, suggests that ancient people may have directly altered the structure of the golden rock. From this perspective, the underside of the boulder, naturally uneven and asymmetrical, might have been deliberately shaped ground or modified to create an impossible balancing point that nature alone could hardly produce. It sounds unbelievable, but when compared to monumental stoneworks like the Ellora and Ajanta caves or other massive rock-cut complexes in India, we realize that ancient stoneworking techniques sometimes surpassed modern expectations. If they could transform entire mountains into intricate temples, then adjusting the center of gravity or crafting a special contact surface for the golden rock, while extraordinary, is not entirely impossible. This theory opens the possibility that we are witnessing a remnant of some long-lost ancient knowledge, and the golden rock may be the final surviving trace of that forgotten mastery. Furthermore, the boulder's location on a steep, inaccessible mountain top raises an even bigger question. Was the golden rock placed here intentionally, or has it been here for tens of thousands of years? If ancient people placed it here, then we are looking at an engineering feat, lost to history. But if it is a natural occurrence, then nature has sculpted one of the strangest equilibrium phenomena on Earth. Today, thousands of visitors come to Golden Rock every year. They stand beneath the boulder, examine the curved surface that touches the mountain at a single tiny point, and wonder what keeps it in place. This question echoes in the minds of physicists, tourists, and believers alike. Some trust in legend, others trust in science, and others still in spiritual power. Yet no matter what one believes, the Golden Rock remains a reminder that even in our modern world, mysteries continue to defy explanation. To this day, the Golden Rock is one of the most extraordinary structures or natural anomalies known to humankind. A boulder that cannot fall a puzzle without a solution, a symbol of faith, and proof that even in a scientific age, there remain wonders that compel science and imagination alike to bow in humility. Across the dry plains of Telangana, where collapsed stone walls lie silently among overgrown grass, there stands a monument that makes anyone stop and stare. The first time they see it, the stone carvings of Warangal Fort. They are not only beautiful, they are strange, illogical, and they even defy modern understanding of medieval construction technology. What remains here feels like a message carved by an engineer far ahead of their time, leaving behind clues that archaeologists, historians, and architectural scholars have tried to decode for decades, yet still cannot reach a definitive answer. Who do you think truly created the carvings at Warangal Fort, the Kakatiya people, or a much older civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Under the harsh sunlight, the geometric motifs, animal figures, and hollow stone structures of Warangal look like creations of a civilization that understood stone in a way modern technology has never replicated. What makes Warangal exceptional is not only its beauty, but its irrational precision. Details too small, too fine, too sharp to have been made with ordinary iron tools. Many researchers describe Warangal as a lost architectural laboratory, and debates continue over whether Kakatiya artisans truly possess such techniques or whether they inherited secrets from an even older forgotten tradition. The stone cuts at Warangal Fort are among the details that puzzle archaeologists the most. Many slabs feature perfectly straight edges so sharp they could slice paper, a level of precision almost unimaginable in the 13th century. Some grooves are so thin that light barely passes through, running seamlessly from end to end as if produced by a modern CNC machine. Strangely, there are no signs of hand vibration chisel marks or irregular force, all of which should appear with the tools of that era. This illogical perfection has led many experts to question whether the Kakatiyas possessed some advanced technique or if they were reworking the legacy of an even older vanished knowledge system. The hollow stone pillars at Warangal Fort are among its most astonishing features. Ancient builders carved out the interiors of massive monolithic blocks while keeping the outer shell perfectly intact. No cracks, no warping, nothing to suggest structural weakness, a feat that even modern engineering must calculate carefully. No one knows from which direction they began hollowing, nor how they ensured the pillars could withstand centuries of conflict and decay. The real mystery is that no tools, drawings, or technical traces have ever been found. This impossible achievement has led many experts to suspect that the Kakatiyas possessed an advanced stoneworking method or that they inherited an architectural secret from a long-lost technical tradition. Venturing deeper into the complex, visitors find carvings of bizarre creatures, lions with unrealistic facial structures, birds with proportions unlike any known species, and hybrid beings such as half-lion, half-elephant, all rendered with remarkable anatomical detail. Some say these are religious symbols, However, the accuracy and muscle structure has led others to ask, are these memories of creatures that once existed but later vanished? Yet no evidence confirms this, and the question continues to linger. The four Tirana gates of Warangal Fort are considered the pinnacle of the site's engineering, not only for their massive scale, but for their near-perfect symmetry. Each gate is assembled from multi-ton stone blocks, positioned precisely along the four cardinal directions, functioning like a giant stone compass. What's astonishing is that the carvings on both sides of each pillar mirror each other so closely that it's nearly impossible to tell which is the original and which is the reflection, a level of precision that today requires CAD modeling and laser measurement. Yet the Kakatiya artisans achieved this using only simple tools. No misalignment, no trial and error markings, no technical drawings have ever been found. This illogical perfection has led many researchers to suspect that the Tirana gates were built upon a knowledge system or an architectural technique that had already been lost long before the Kakatiya era. One of the most baffling phenomena at Warangal Fort is the way certain stone blocks appear to be balanced almost unrealistically. Some of them do not fully touch the ground, leaving a gap so thin that light passes through like a thread. Considering that ancient foundations were rarely level positioning multi-ton stones with such precision, seems nearly impossible using human strength alone. Many theories suggest this might have been an early anti-earthquake technique designed to absorb vibrations, yet to this day no research has been able to explain how this mysterious mechanism actually worked. The more one observes Warangal, the stranger it becomes. Some walls appear monolithic from afar, but are actually built from multiple stones, fitted so tightly that not even a sheet of paper can pass through the joints. This technique is seen in advanced civilizations like the Inca or ancient Egypt, but is rare in India. This raises the question, was there some shared ancient knowledge? Or is this simply an astonishing coincidence? Geometric motifs repeat across structures, spirals interlocking triangles, hexagons not merely decorative, but patterned as though encoding a message. Some scholars consider them a geometric language of the Kakatiya people. Others believe they served astronomical or geomantic purposes. No interpretation has been universally accepted. Many stones show extremely sharp break lines, as if sliced by a high-powered cutting tool, something non-existent in the 13th century. The consistency of these breaks has sparked speculation about whether heat sound or some unknown stone softening technique was used, though all of this remains hypothetical. Another astonishing feature is the presence of rotating stone doors. The pivot mechanism is carved directly into the pillar, allowing a massive stone door to swing smoothly. This was not a common Indian technique at the time, and certainly not something easily done with crude tools. Historical records attribute Warangal Fort to the Kakatiya dynasty, but when the precision of the carvings is compared to other structures from the same era, the difference is startling. No other Kakatiya monument matches this level of perfection. This leads to one of the most controversial questions in Indian archaeology. Was Warangal truly built by the Kakatiyas, or did they inherit a far older forgotten monument? Doubts surrounding Warangal Fort arise from a series of anomalies that modern archaeology struggles to explain. First, many stone surfaces show no tool marks whatsoever. No chiseling, no grinding traces, no signs of force vibration, as if they were shaped using a flawlessly precise cutting technique unknown to us. Despite the monument's vast scale, no evidence of workshops or matching tools has ever been found. The stone joining methods and complexity of the details far exceed what contemporary kingdoms could achieve, even resembling the tight-fitted masonry of civilizations located far away. The carved creatures display anatomical accuracy as if observed directly, not imagined as symbolic motifs. At the same time, no technical drawings or construction records survive, and the perfect symmetry of the Tirana gates seems too exact to have been created entirely by hand. All of this leads many scholars to believe that the technical origins of Warangal may lie outside conventional historical frameworks. The theories surrounding the true origin of Warangal Fort reflect the confusion of scholars when confronted with its seemingly super-advanced techniques. Some researchers believe the Kakatiya themselves built it, but suggest they possessed a secret guild of artisans whose skills far surpass those of neighboring cultures. A bolder theory proposes that Warangal was constructed atop an even older civilization whose mastery of stonework was so sophisticated that it has since been lost. Others argue that the site represents the remnants of a once widespread architectural tradition across India that disappeared without leaving records. Finally, some scholars suggest that the carvings and structures embody a symbolic, technological system disconnected from mainstream history, hinting at an ancient body of knowledge we have yet to decipher. To this day, there is no definitive answer. The only certainty is this Warangal is not just a monument, it is a mystery, carved into stone, challenging all assumptions about what ancient people could do. If there is one place in India where history seems to break its own rules, it is Kiladi. On the surface, it is nothing more than a quiet village in Tamil Nadu. But beneath that seemingly ordinary soil lies a secret that has shaken the foundations of South Asian archaeology. When the first spade struck the earth in the year 2015, no one expected that the dust would reveal a vanished urban world older, more complex, and far more advanced than anything described in the history books. The deeper archaeologists dug, the clearer. A shocking truth emerged: Kiladi does not fit into any historical timeline we thought we understood. It is not merely an ancient settlement. It is a silent city, preserved within layers of earth, like a message that has waited thousands of years to be uncovered. A message powerful enough to challenge everything we believed about the origins of the Dravidian civilization. Do you think this silent city of Kiladi was truly advanced beyond what history tells us? Share your thoughts in the comments below. From the very first trenches, archaeologists knew they were facing something unusual. Standard-sized fired bricks arranged in wide linear layouts spread across the site, resembling the remains of a fully developed urban settlement. Verandas, floors, small pathways and drainage systems appeared with striking consistency. There was none of the disorder typical of village-based craft settlements. Instead, Kiladi bore the hallmark of a planned city developed to a degree that many ancient civilizations took centuries to achieve. What makes Kiladi extraordinary is not only its architecture. Radiocarbon analysis of charcoal and organic materials indicates that this site dates back to the 6th century before Christ, meaning more than 2,500 years ago, at least half a millennium earlier than what classical Tamil literature suggests. This immediately raises a major question. If Kiladi existed this early, has the timeline of Tamil cultural development been underestimated all along? The socio-economic landscape of Kiladi becomes clearer as pottery fragments, iron tools, agate beads, and finely crafted artifacts are unearthed. Surprisingly, Kiladi was not a small residential settlement, but rather a large-scale production center where kilns operated. Continuously, blacksmiths forged sharp tools, and artisans created jewelry with remarkable skill. Evidence of textile activity, from spindle whorls to traces of woven fabric, shows that craftsmanship here was highly organized, comparable to that of major ancient civilizations. Notably, the presence of non-local materials, such as glass minerals and stones, originating from distant regions, demonstrates that Kiladi may have been part of the Indian Ocean trade network, establishing routes that connected it to Sri Lanka, the Middle East, and even East Africa. Altogether, these clues portray a vibrant, technically skilled community with early international connections. The inscribed pottery fragments from Kiladi are the pivotal evidence that forces archaeologists to re-examine the entire history of South India. Etched onto the fired clay are signs resembling early Tamil Brahmi, but the shocking discovery is that their dating appears centuries earlier than anything previously recorded. If this conclusion is confirmed, it would mean that the Tamil script was not adopted from North India, but may have developed independently, reflecting a distinctive linguistic and writing tradition of the Dravidian people. This directly challenges the long-held belief that South India developed late and was heavily shaped by Aryan culture. These tiny characters therefore become clues powerful enough to rewrite the historical timeline of the entire region. And from here arises the explosive question, the one that makes Kiladi a true archaeological bombshell. Who were the people of this civilization? And could they have been far more advanced than history has ever acknowledged? The most debated hypothesis surrounding Kiladi suggests that the ancient Dravidian inhabitants may have possessed an early urbanized civilization, one with its own writing system, sophisticated production networks, and involvement in international trade long before historical records appeared. Evidence from Kiladi, from inscribed pottery and firing kilns to jewelry workshops and non-local materials, indicates that this was not a community shaped by northern influences, but rather a parallel center of development with an independent identity. If this hypothesis is confirmed, Kiladi would stand as proof that South India once hosted a distinct civilization, sparsely recorded, yet equal in advancement to major ancient centers of Asia. Such a realization would force us to reconsider the entire structure of power culture and language across the Indian subcontinent. However, some scholars take a more cautious stance. They argue that the inscriptions require deeper analysis, the dating could still be debated, and the site's development might involve complex interactions with surrounding cultures. Nevertheless, no evidence so far has conclusively refuted the independent civilization hypothesis. The absence of firm answers only deepens Kiladi's allure. What makes Kiladi most perplexing is the way it vanished silently, leaving behind none of the usual signs of chaos that accompany the collapse of an urban center. There are no traces of warfare, no layers of ash from large-scale fires, and no evidence of major floods or widespread disease. The thick, continuous layers of sediment rising several meters show that people lived here steadily for generations before suddenly abandoning the site. The architectural structures remain intact, as if life in Kiladi had been frozen in time. This unusual quietness has led many scholars to suspect that Kiladi may have undergone social, economic, or political shifts that we have not yet been able to identify, an invisible form of collapse, subtle yet more profound than any natural disaster. Among all unanswered questions surrounding Kiladi, the greatest remains. Could this be evidence of a Dravidian civilization hidden by history, a civilization that achieved urbanization, literacy, and international trade far earlier than ever believed? The answer still lies beneath unexcavated soil. Kiladi is more than a site. It is a reminder that history is not always linear or complete. Some civilizations flourished brilliantly, but vanished into silence. Some puzzle pieces remained buried for millennia, waiting to reshape our understanding of the past. And Kiladi, with both what it reveals and what it hides, forces us to confront the possibility that we may have underestimated the ancients and underestimated the diversity of civilizations that once thrived on the Indian subcontinent. In an age where archaeology merges with advanced technologies from ancient DNA to geo-scanning, the truth may soon emerge. Until then, Kiladi remains one of South India's greatest mysteries, a testament to the fact that some civilizations advanced far beyond our expectations. We simply haven't uncovered enough yet to fully understand them. Hidden among the red sandstone cliffs of Karnataka, the Badami cave complex looks from afar like massive cuts carved into the mountainside. But as soon as you step inside, your perception shifts instantly. The reliefs appear with such precision that anyone would pause for a moment, wondering how could people of the 6th century possibly create works like this. Badami is not merely a religious cave system. It is a paradox, carved in stone, a place where art faith and ancient science intersect in ways that cannot be explained by the brief historical records that survive today. In your opinion, what allowed ancient artisans to create such unbelievably precise carvings at Badami? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The carving techniques at Badami astonish researchers because they far exceed what anyone imagines for the 6th century. Ancient artisans carved directly onto vertical cliff faces without any preparatory layers, without drafts, and without allowing even the slightest margin for error. The stone surfaces are so smooth and flat that they appear to have been polished by a rotary mechanism or a tool capable of creating perfectly even planes, something seemingly impossible with primitive iron hammers and chisels. The cuts are deep, straight, and uniformly consistent, suggesting that the artisans were not only highly skilled, but may have worked with some form of precise measuring system. This level of accuracy raises an unsettling question. Did they possess a special technique, a now lost body of knowledge, or perhaps a set of tools that history has never recorded? For this reason, Badami is seen as a strange and sudden leap in ancient stone art, a peak that appeared abruptly without any clear transitional stages or developmental background. Among the works at Badami, the most famous are the monumental reliefs that remain flawlessly proportioned. The goddess Durga battling the buffalo demon Mahishasura is depicted mid-spin, her hair and garments flying in a direction that defies gravity. The curves of her body are so natural that the sandstone seems to bend. Beside her, the Shiva Nataraja relief, 18 arms radiating like a cosmic wheel, appears almost unreal. Every arm falls into a harmonious composition so precise that some scholars believe the artisans possessed advanced mathematical and anatomical understanding, not just artistic intuition. The most debated relief is Vishnu in his Varaha, form the boar lifting the earth. The snout of Varaha protrudes nearly 40 centimeters from the wall, forming a sharply carved three-dimensional structure. Achieving such a large protruding mass without breaking the surrounding rock would require deep knowledge of stone structure fracture directions and controlled force distribution. Yet the tools found nearby show no signs of such advanced capability. Modern attempts to recreate this technique often fail due to cracking or breaking. To many, Badami resembles a laboratory of ancient stone art, except no one knows who the scientists were. One of the most baffling features of Badami is the presence of perfectly flat surfaces carved inside the caves, straight, crisp, perpendicular cuts that look as if they were made with a large metal blade or a guided cutting device of remarkable precision. When a ruler is placed against these surfaces, almost no gaps appear, which is completely at odds with the natural behavior of Badami sandstone, a material moderately hard yet prone to splitting along its layers. Even shallow carving would demand delicate skill, and yet the artisans here managed to produce deep, protruding forms and complex geometric structures without causing fractures or spreading cracks. This has led many researchers to wonder what method did they use to control force so precisely on stone. And could this be evidence of an ancient technique that once existed, yet has vanished entirely from historical records? Beyond the technical mastery, Badami raises questions of faith and culture. Within a compact cave system, traces of three distinct religious traditions appear: Hinduism, Jainism, and motifs that do not fit either, possibly belonging to an even older belief system. The coexistence of these traditions without any clear historical explanation suggests that Badami may once have been a sacred center far more significant than the surviving records imply, perhaps even transcending the Chalukya dynasty itself. All the mysteries, from stone-cutting techniques to religious diversity, lead to the single biggest question, one that archaeologists, art historians, and scholars have debated for decades: who truly created the Badami reliefs, and why was their artistic capability far superior to anything else in the region? Although Indian records attribute the caves to the Chalukya dynasty, not a single document describes the artisans. No names, no lists of workshops, no folklore about master sculptors. It is as if they emerged suddenly carved masterpieces far ahead of their age and then vanished without a trace. The biggest debates surrounding Badami do not lie only in its seemingly impossible reliefs, but in the mysterious traces of the artisans themselves. One theory suggests that the entire complex may have been the work of a secretive artisan order that existed long before the Chalukya period. They might have possessed techniques passed down orally within a very restricted circle, never written, never revealed, essentially a form of privileged knowledge. When this group dissolved or disappeared, their entire craft vanished with them. Another perspective proposes that Badami could have been a rare meeting ground for artisans from distant regions, Central Asia, ancient Persia, even Southeast Asia cultures with long-standing stone carving traditions. Their convergence might have produced a sudden artistic explosion, far surpassing anything nearby. Yet if this were true, a troubling question remains. Why is there no trace of this style continuing elsewhere? A bolder hypothesis argues that Badami may in fact be a reconstruction of a much older prototype, perhaps belonging to a lost technical tradition. The Chalukya artisans may not have invented the style, but merely replicated a legacy far greater than the capabilities of their own era. This could explain why, after Badami, the technique suddenly stagnated, as though they were trying to recreate something they themselves never fully understood. The boldest theory suggests that Badami may have belonged to a technical tradition far ahead of its time, one that never appears in any official historical records. The laser straight cuts, the impossibly deep reliefs, and the mathematically precise compositions imply that ancient artisans possess skills far beyond what we currently understand. In fact, the level of accuracy is so high that even modern sculptors struggle to replicate it, hinting at an advanced technique or knowledge system that once existed only to disappear without a trace. The final mystery lies in the abrupt silence that followed. After its golden age, Badami faded quickly. No massive migration was recorded. No war destroyed the artisans. No sudden cultural collapse explains the disappearance of the technique. This leads to a philosophical question. How can a technique reach such a peak and then vanish almost overnight? To this day, the Badami reliefs remain in the cool shadows of the ancient caves, waiting for someone to decode them. Yet the deeper scholars study, the more they realize that Badami is not simply a religious site. It is an echo of a forgotten craft, proof that throughout history there were moments when human ability surged far beyond its surroundings, only to disappear before anyone could preserve it. And perhaps that is why Badami stands as one of the greatest artistic mysteries of ancient India, a riddle carved into stone thousands of years ago, and one that we are only just beginning to understand. In the dense jungles of Rio, where reddish-brown rivers divide the land into countless tangled branches, the Muaratakus temple complex stands silently like a fragment of memory, torn from a distant age. Seen from afar, it resembles no other Indonesian temple, neither Borobudur, nor Prambanan, nor even the sacred sites of Srivijaya, described in historical texts. The elongated dark red bricks fired to near perfection and arranged into cylindrical towers, box-shaped structures, and tiered monuments all bear the imprint of a technique that feels both familiar and strangely foreign. The most baffling detail is that the materials used to make these bricks did not originate from the soft soils of Rio. Mixed within them are yellow river sand and sandstone materials found only hundreds of kilometers away. This means the ancient builders either transported the materials over vast distances or possessed a logistical network far more advanced than what is assumed for Southeast Asian civilizations of their time. But even if we can explain the materials, a greater mystery remains. Why would a region so far from political centers possess such a sophisticated religious architectural complex as Muaratakus? Who do you think truly built Muaratakus? And why would they transport materials from such distant places? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Towers, such as Candi Maligai and Candi Tua, make archaeologists hesitate to classify them within any known architectural tradition. Maligai resembles the slender stupas of Sri Lanka, yet does not follow the standard proportions of the Theravada tradition. Candi Tua looks like a miniature stepped platform from Hindu structures, but its layer arrangement deviates from established norms. Candi Palanka is even stranger, merely a square foundation with no trace indicating whether a deity or Buddha statue ever stood upon it. There are no reliefs, no inscriptions, no signs of scriptures or ritual iconography. The entire complex appears like an undefined religious experiment, as if its builders were testing a new form of architecture that would never again be repeated. All of this gives the impression that Muaratakus was not a natural part of Srivijaya. It exists as an isolated cultural island, possibly older than the empire's golden age. Geological surveys reveal another contradiction. Rio sits on soft alluvial soil, prone to subsidence, yet the foundations of Muaratakus have remained intact for over a millennium. Excavations expose a multi-layered structure, compacted earth-river pebbles, crushed brick, and a mysterious, highly durable material resembling natural cement. No evidence suggests that local populations use such material in any other construction. It appears in Muaratakus as a remnant of a lost building technique. Who created this ancient cement? Where did they learn it? Archaeologists can only acknowledge that the builders possessed engineering knowledge far ahead of their region. Meanwhile, archaeoastronomers note that the complex's main axis deviates slightly from the traditional east-west orientation common in Buddhist architecture. This deviation aligns with the constellation used by ancient Indian religious centers to determine ceremonial seasons. If intentional, it suggests the builders had deep astronomical knowledge, using the sky as a compass for laying out the foundations. But why would such a remote region as Rio require an astronomically precise ceremonial center? What rituals took place here? Who performed them? And why have all traces of them vanished? Local folklore insists that Muaratakus was not built by ordinary humans. Some stories speak of giants who lived before the ancestors of present populations. Others describe people from far away who built the temple and suddenly departed. But folklore remains folklore. Archaeology requires evidence. The strange thing is that even the most basic evidence is missing. No inscriptions, no names, no royal marks. It is as if the builders intentionally left no clues about themselves, like a team of anonymous engineers who constructed the site and disappeared into the shadows of history. And this is where the greatest question arises, the question that makes Muaratakus one of Southeast Asia's most captivating mysteries. Who built Muaratakus, and why did they vanish? The theory that Muaratakus was built by the Srivijaya Empire may sound reasonable at first, but the deeper we examine it, the more contradictions arise. The architecture of this complex is far too different from any known Srivijayan site, especially those in Palembang, the political and religious heart of the empire. If Muaratakus truly belonged to Srivijaya, similar structures should exist elsewhere, or at least some traces of a shared architectural style. Instead, Muaratakus stands completely alone. No architectural siblings, no stone inscriptions, no royal records. Even an empire renowned for leaving written evidence is entirely silent about it. This strange isolation makes the Srivijaya hypothesis increasingly unconvincing and opens a far bigger question: if not them, then who created this remarkable monument? The second theory suggests that Muaratakus belonged to a civilization even older than Srivijaya, a society that once flourished brilliantly before disappearing long before history had the chance to record their existence. If this is true, the Muaratakus complex may be the only surviving remnant of a community with exceptional technological mastery. They could fire bricks to an unusually high hardness transport materials across hundreds of kilometers, construct multi-layered foundations that resist subsidence, and even understand astronomical principles well enough to align their structures with the heavens. None of these techniques appear in any other archaeological site in the region, leading many experts to believe that this is the trace of an independent culture that has completely vanished. But the greatest question remains: who were they? Where did they come from? And how could an advanced civilization collapse without leaving a single trace except for a solitary temple complex hidden deep in the Rio forests? The third theory proposes that Muaratakus may have been built by a migrating group of monk scholars or religious engineers who came from distant lands, possibly India, Sri Lanka, or a now lost ceremonial center. These individuals may have carried with them a body of knowledge, blending multiple architectural traditions, using it to construct a secretive ritual complex on elevated ground near the confluence of rivers, a location considered sacred in many ancient belief systems. After completing their mission, this group might have continued their journey or vanished due to disease, warfare, or a natural disaster unrecorded in history. This would explain why Muaratakus shows no signs of successor communities, no continued religious presence, and no architectural style similar to it anywhere else. However, the deepest mystery does not lie in the question, who built Muaratakus, but in the next, why did the builders disappear completely, leaving no descendants, no cultural continuity, no subsequent temple complexes? A project of this scale would have required hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers over many years, yet they vanished as if they had never existed. The perfect bricks, the durable foundation, the astronomical alignment, the transported materials all remain visible, tangible, while the people behind them are entirely invisible. This is the greatest paradox of Muaratakus. Today, standing in the brown earth courtyard of the complex, looking at the silent red brick towers, swaying under the wind, passing through bamboo groves, one cannot help feeling they are touching the legacy of a group with extraordinary knowledge. Yet for some unknown reason, they chose to disappear or were forced to vanish from history. Muaratakus is their only surviving witness, a message written in brick and stone, but without anyone left to decipher it. Perhaps the true answer does not lie in the earth or the bricks, but in the strange emptiness between what remains and what has been lost. And it is this emptiness that makes Muaratakus one of Southeast Asia's greatest archaeological enigmas, a place where anonymous builders left behind their masterpiece and walked off the historical stage forever. In the peaceful plains of Uttar Pradesh, the Bhitargaon terracotta temple stands like a solid memory from the Gupta era, an age often called the Golden Age of Indian civilization. Yet what makes Bhitargaon mysterious is not only its age or the ancient beauty of its terracotta panels, but the strange disconnect it has from the architectural style of its time. When one looks at Bhitargaon, it feels as if the structure belongs to an entirely different architectural lineage, a different philosophy, perhaps even a group of artisans completely separate from mainstream Gupta craftsmanship. This alone makes the temple one of the greatest enigmas in the architectural history of India. Why do you think a misplaced temple like Bhitargaon appeared during the Gupta period? Could it belong to an entirely different architectural tradition? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Bhitargaon was built around the 5th century, a period when Gupta architecture had already reached its peak, with refined stone monuments, gracefully carved pillars, and precision-cut masonry. Yet in complete contrast to that long-established tradition, Bhitargaon was constructed entirely from terracotta bricks. Even more astonishing, these bricks were far from ordinary. They were fired at extremely high temperatures, densely compacted, and durable enough to withstand monsoons, floods, and harsh weather for more than 15 centuries. This exceptional resilience raises a profound question: just how advanced were the Gupta techniques for firing bricks? What binding materials did they use to make these bricks hold together as firmly as stone? And most importantly, why did they choose brick over stone, the very symbol of sacred architecture during that era? When examined up close, the terracotta reliefs of Bhitargaon reveal a level of craftsmanship that seems to defy logic. The figures of Vishnu, Shiva, battle scenes, 8-petaled floral motifs, and spiraling geometric patterns are carved in unexpectedly deep relief, with edges sharp as if cut and details so thin and delicate that even the slightest flaw during firing should have caused cracking, warping, or flaking. Yet they have remained intact through centuries of monsoons, humidity, and extreme temperature shifts. The true absurdity lies in their overperformance details, far too thin, too sharp, too deep features that should not have survived in terracotta for 15 centuries. This improbable durability has led many experts to suspect that Gupta artisans once possessed a completely lost brick-making technology, possibly involving ultra-high temperature firing or some kind of natural binding compound with properties similar to ancient cement, one that modern science has yet to fully identify. The Shikara structure of Bhitargaon, the main tower rising like an axis between heaven and earth, is even more perplexing than its terracotta material. It is one of the earliest surviving examples of the Nagara style, retaining nearly its original form without major reconstruction. Its graceful, sloping curves, progressively narrowing roof tiers, and the astonishingly precise geometric arrangement of bricks all suggest that the Gupta builders possessed an architectural mindset far ahead of their time. What remains difficult to explain is this: why did such a groundbreaking prototype appear only once in the entire Gupta architectural record? Its solitude has led many scholars to wonder whether this shikara was built for a singular ritual, a unique royal event, or some purpose so exceptional that the technique vanished forever afterward. As scholars delve deeper into Bhitargaon, the temple reveals increasingly bizarre and difficult to explain features. The entrance is so small that it does not fit the design of a structure meant for communal worship or frequent ritual activity. This has led many researchers to believe that the temple may not have been intended for daily devotion, but rather functioned as a sacred vault, a place meant to safeguard holy objects or symbols of power that the royal authority wished to protect at all costs. Its ventilation system adds to the mystery. Hollow chambers embedded within the walls form a strange network of air passages that may have been designed to modulate sound or enhance the structural stability of the building. Some theories even suggest it could represent an ancient earthquake-resistant mechanism, though the evidence remains highly speculative. And then comes the greatest mystery of all: the reason for its construction. Why did the Gupta Empire, renowned for its mastery of stone architecture, build an extremely complex terracotta temple that contradicts their own traditions? Many theories have been proposed, but each leads to even bigger questions. Some scholars believe that Bhitargaon may have served as an architectural laboratory where Gupta artisans experimented with one of the earliest forms of the shikara. However, if this truly was a test structure, a major question immediately arises: why did they use terracotta bricks instead of stone, the more ideal material for evaluating durability and form? Moreover, why would a supposed prototype be built on such a large scale and decorated with terracotta reliefs so intricate that they seem far beyond the purpose of an experimental model. Another theory suggests the temple was created for a specific ritual performed only once in the lifetime of a Gupta king. If true, Bhitargaon becomes the stage for an undocumented royal ceremony. But what ceremony? No texts, no folklore, no parallel structures support this idea. A ritual important enough to require such a unique monument, yet completely absent from historical memory. The boldest theory suggests that Bhitargaon may be the final remnant of an exceptionally advanced terracotta architecture tradition, one that existed alongside Gupta stone architecture but vanished entirely from the historical record. If this is true, the silence of the past becomes unsettling. How could a technical system sophisticated enough to create a complex monument like Bhitargaon leave behind no other sites, no texts, and no trace of continuity? Its solitary existence prompts scholars to wonder whether it represents the last surviving fragment of a once flourishing architectural school that history somehow erased without explanation. But no matter which theory one chooses, Bhitargaon defies conventional logic. Everything about it, from materials and techniques to geometric motifs, tower structure, and purpose, suggests a misplaced monument. It belongs to the Gupta period, yet simultaneously does not. It exists in history, yet fits into no developmental sequence before or after. It stands alone in the plains of India, like a riddle, each brick whispering, something greater once existed here, but history erased it. Perhaps this contradiction is precisely what makes Bhitargaon one of the most mysterious ancient structures in the Indian subcontinent. A terracotta temple, unusually complex, exceeding the standards of its time, enduring even more than many stone monuments, and surviving as an undeciphered message from the Gupta world. Bhitargaon is a reminder that history is not always linear. Sometimes it leaves behind a monument that cannot be placed into any known context to remind us of unwritten chapters, lost technologies, and stories buried beneath time. And Bhitargaon, in its solitary defiance, is one of those stories. Amid the countless mysteries surrounding the Giza Pyramid complex, there exists a small artifact so insignificant in size that one might easily overlook it, yet powerful enough to spark endless debates among archaeologists and architectural engineers for decades. The Giza copper hook tool. A copper hook discovered inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It is not a royal statue, not treasure made of gold or gems, not a grand ceremonial relief from the Old Kingdom. It is merely a small object made of copper and wood, forgotten inside a wooden box for nearly 140 years. And yet its very simplicity hides a profound mystery tied to the greatest monument ever built by human hands. What was it used for? Why did the ancient Egyptians place it inside the Queen's Chamber, one of the most enigmatic rooms in the entire pyramid? And could this copper hook be a missing piece in the construction process of the Great Pyramid? Or does it belong to a lost religious ritual that we no longer understand? What do you think this copper hook was really used for inside the Great Pyramid? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The story begins in 1872 when Wayman Dixon and his assistant probed two narrow air shafts inside the Queen's Chamber. In a space barely a few dozen centimeters wide, they discovered three objects: a stone ball, a small wooden rod, and a copper hook attached to two pieces of wood. These items became known as the Dixon relics. Oddly, no other artifact found within the Great Pyramid resembles them. No ancient records describe them. And among the thousands of Egyptian artifacts excavated across the country, nothing matches the copper hook's form or function. It does not belong to hunting equipment, to construction tools, nor to ceremonial items used in royal rites. It stands completely alone, as if it were part of a technology or a purpose that we have never seen before. Even more astonishing, carbon dating of the wooden components revealed that they are over 4,700 years old, meaning the copper hook dates precisely to the time of Khufu, when the Great Pyramid was built. This eliminates the theory that the objects were accidentally placed there by later dynasties. It is genuine. It comes from the real-time period, and it was used. The slight wear on the copper surface indicates repeated use in an activity we cannot yet identify. But what was that activity? When examining the structure of the copper hook closely, it becomes clear that this is no ordinary object. The hook is forged from pure copper, using precise heating and hammering techniques, creating a smooth, balanced curve rarely seen in common working tools. The two attached wooden pieces are crafted using mortise and tenon joinery, typical of the Old Kingdom, revealing careful planning in both design and intended function. Copper was a precious, difficult-to-acquire metal, so the Egyptians would never use it for trivial items. Yet if this was a construction tool, why are no similar examples found at other building sites? If it was ceremonial, why does it bear no religious symbols? And most intriguingly, if it was truly important, why did the ancients hide it inside a sealed chamber instead of keeping it outside or displaying it visibly? From this seemingly small discovery, numerous scientific theories have emerged in an attempt to explain the true function of the copper hook. Many experts believe it may have been part of a primitive surveying toolkit used to determine true north measure angles or align the Great Pyramid's axis with the astonishing precision that still puzzles modern researchers. The stone ball and wooden rod from the Dixon relics might once have worked together with the hook in a directional mechanism we no longer understand. However, every theory faces a major obstacle: a complete lack of supporting evidence. There are no replicas, no ancient texts describing such tools, and no accompanying illustrations. The copper hook exists like a fragment torn from a larger machine, a remnant of a technology erased entirely from history. One of the most popular theories suggests that the copper hook was once used inside the mysterious air shafts of the Great Pyramid, narrow channels that point directly towards sacred stars like Orion and Sirius. According to this idea, the hook may have helped builders pull, rotate, or adjust small stone blocks hidden deep within these shafts, far beyond the reach of human hands. However, the hook's soft, curved shape seems unsuited for heavy pulling force, and the slender wooden pieces make this explanation even more doubtful. If it was meant for manipulating tiny internal components in extremely tight spaces, the theory remains plausible. Yet the biggest question persists: if it was merely a technical adjustment tool, why was it carefully hidden inside a sealed chamber, as if it held a purpose far more significant? This brings us back to the core question, the greatest mystery of all. What was it used for during the construction of the Great Pyramid? The Great Pyramid is a masterpiece of precision engineering and scale. Massive blocks weighing tens of tons were placed with millimeter accuracy. The ventilation shafts were aligned directly with sacred stars such as Orion and Sirius. And the Queen's Chamber, where the copper hook was discovered, contains no sarcophagus, no inscriptions, and no architectural clues that clearly define its intended purpose. For generations, scholars have debated whether the Queen's Chamber was ceremonial preparatory or a technical room located at the pyramid's core. If it were a technical chamber, the presence of the copper hook suddenly becomes extremely logical, as though the final worker left it behind before the structure was sealed forever. Some bold researchers believe the copper hook was once part of an internal mechanism used in the construction, a mechanical system now completely lost, with the hook being its only surviving trace. But why was it placed in the Queen's Chamber instead of the work area? Why inside a small box hidden in an air shaft? Could the ancient Egyptians have intentionally hidden it? Perhaps it was not a mundane tool, but a sacred implement used in a completion ritual, a ceremony symbolically activating the pyramid's connection to the stars. Every theory, scientific or spiritual, is plausible, yet none has sufficient evidence to stand as truth. And this uncertainty is what makes the Giza copper hook tool one of the most enigmatic artifacts in human history. Was it a technical device, a sacred object, a key to a lost engineering method from 4,500 years ago, or simply an object forgotten by accident? No one knows. And perhaps, until humanity discovers more secrets hidden deep within the Great Pyramid, this tiny copper hook will continue to challenge modern understanding. How much do we truly know about the ancient Egyptians, and how much of their technology remains forever buried within the colossal stone walls of Khufu's masterpiece? The Sun Temple at Modera is regarded as one of the most unusual and precise structures in the entire history of ancient Indian architecture, not only because of its mythical beauty, but also because of its layered structural system, calculated according to the movement of the sun with near-perfect accuracy. When stepping into the complex, one immediately realizes that this is not merely a religious site built to worship the sun god Surya, but a sophisticated ancient astronomical model where every direction, every proportion, every staircase, and every engraved detail contains a hidden logic far beyond conventional architectural thinking. What has puzzled archaeologists for decades is this: how were the Solanki people of the 11th century able to understand the sun's motion with accuracy close to modern standards? And more importantly, why did they need to create such an intricate astronomical structure in the first place? What do you think the Solanki people created such a precise machine of light for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The most astonishing phenomenon at Modera is the light axis that appears on the morning of the spring equinox, a singular moment that happens only once a year. At that precise instant, the rising sun aligns perfectly, so its rays pass through the main gateway, glide straight down the dark corridor, and illuminate the exact spot where the statue of Surya once stood. What seems unbelievable is that for nearly 1,000 years, despite changes in terrain shifts, in climate, and human impact on the structure, the path of that beam has not deviated even slightly. Such precision has forced modern astronomers to admit that the Solanki builders could not have relied on mere religious intuition. They must have observed the sky for generations, recording the sun's movements with a remarkably sophisticated system of astronomical knowledge. For this reason, many scholars describe Modera as a solar observatory disguised as a sacred temple. The structure of the Modera complex becomes especially striking when we look closely at its three main components: Surya Kund Sabha Mandap and Guda Mandap, three architectural masses deliberately aligned along the east-west axis. Among them, Surya Kund stands out the most, a massive square, stepped reservoir formed from hundreds of large and small steps, accompanied by numerous shrines embedded along each tier of stone. Each shrine functions as a geometric anchor, creating a multi-layered composition so refined that many modern architects consider it one of the most intricate stepped structures of medieval India. The presence of the sacred number 108 in Surya Kund is no coincidence. This number is fundamental in Hindu cosmology, tied to solar cycles, astronomical calculations, and the unique proportional relationship between Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. As the sun shifts throughout the seasons, the water surface becomes a kind of astronomical mirror, reflecting light into layered patterns, an optical phenomenon that many researchers believe may have been used to track seasonal transitions. Thus, Surya Kund was not merely a place for ritual purification. It may have functioned as a sophisticated light-measuring instrument, serving ancient astronomical purposes. Next is the Sabha Mandap, a pillared hall containing 52 stone columns, each one carved with motifs representing rituals, movements, and activities associated with each week of the year. 52 weeks, 52 pillars are no coincidence. This repetition suggests that the mandap functioned as a stone calendar recording the passage of time through symbols and light. If true Modera was not just a sacred place for connecting with Surya, but also a center where people monitored agricultural cycles, predicted sowing periods, and perhaps tracked seasonal astronomical events. Gudha Mandap, the deepest sanctum of Modera, once housed a solid gold statue of the sun god, Surya, a detail described in many ancient texts as radiating like a living flame when touched by sunlight. The use of gold was not merely a symbol of divine power, it was also a deliberate choice of optical technology. Gold reflects light in a soft, diffused manner, creating a broader and more intense halo compared to any other metal. When the spring equinox beam aligned perfectly with the statue, that golden surface would ignite into a brilliant halo, leading ancient observers to believe that Surya himself had manifested before them. This phenomenon not only amplified the sense of sacred presence, but also reinforces the theory that Solanki architects intentionally designed Gudha Mandap as a stage to reenact the moment of the sun's rebirth, a central ritual theme in Vedic cosmology. However, the deepest and most debated mystery is this: why did the Solanki architects create such a complex astronomical monument? If the temple's only purpose was to honor Surya, a much simpler structure would have sufficed. Yet Modera contains far deeper layers of meaning, an astronomical light to the repeated appearance of the sacred number 108 in Surya Kund, 52 pillars, symbolizing 52 weeks depictions of Surya riding 7 horses linked to the 7 colors of the light spectrum and the 7 days of the week, along with numerous carvings illustrating the diffusion of solar energy. This is not a random arrangement. It is an entire symbolic system. It resembles a coded map of light, time, astronomical cycles, and ancient cosmology. Many modern scholars believe that Modera was not merely a temple, but may once have functioned as an ancient astronomical research center, where Solanki priests and scholars observed even the slightest shifts of the sun to calculate dates and seasonal patterns. The temple's architecture, with its precise alignments and deliberate spatial layout, may have served as a stone instrument capable of marking seasonal transitions or tracking subtle variations in the sun's path. Other researchers interpret Modera as a ritual light machine in which sunlight, when entering at the exact intended angle, activated powerful optical effects inside the sanctum, creating an overwhelming sense of divine presence that ancient observers interpreted as the manifestation of Surya. Even more daring is the hypothesis that the entire complex was designed to support extremely accurate calculations of the Vedic calendar, serving Surya Vidya, a sophisticated ancient knowledge system centered on solar energy and the fundamental nature of life. What is striking is that no Solanki records survive to explain its true purpose. There are no architectural manuals, no detailed ritual instructions, and no notes on astronomical measurements. All that remains is stone light and a set of recurring numbers. This silence from history only deepens the mystery. A structure requiring such extraordinary astronomical precision must have served an equally extraordinary purpose. But what was that purpose? A supreme ritual, an observation center, a cosmological model, or a body of knowledge now lost forever? To this day, the question remains unanswered. Perhaps it is precisely this silence, combined with the temple's geometric perfection, that has made the Sun Temple at Modera one of ancient India's greatest precise yet unexplained achievements. And for that reason, it continues to attract scholars, archaeologists, astronomers, and lovers of ancient mysteries around the world, people who still wonder, why did the Solanki create such a flawless machine of light, and what was its true purpose? The Bairat Rock Edict, resting humbly on a stone slab amid the dry hills of Rajasthan, India, looks so modest that a passerby would never imagine it is one of the oldest, most unique, and most debated inscriptions from the reign of Emperor Ashoka the Great. It is smaller, rougher, and far less formal than the grand pillars or rock walls bearing Ashoka's famous edicts. Yet the Badami characters carved onto this stone contain something extraordinary, a message unlike any other decree issued during the Mauryan era. For archaeologists, the Bairat Rock Edict is not merely a political or religious record, it is a doorway into countless unresolved questions surrounding early Buddhism, the nature of Ashoka's imperial authority, and the possible existence of a now-lost Buddhist sect. Why do you think Ashoka chose to carve such a completely different message onto a small, isolated stone at Bairat? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Throughout Ashoka's edicts, one usually finds universal moral teachings encouraging compassion, prohibiting unnecessary killing, promoting social ethics, religious harmony, and adjusting the governance of the vast empire. But the Bairat Edict is entirely different. Instead of discussing laws or ethics, it urges people, especially monks, to study specific doctrinal texts in depth, something no other Ashokan edict ever mentions. This immediately raises a mystery. Why did Ashoka intervene directly in doctrinal matters like a religious scholar instead of merely acting as a royal patron? The mystery deepens when the edict emphasizes 7 sermons, a group of texts that scholars still cannot definitively match with any known Buddhist scriptures. Some believe they correspond to parts of the Dhammapada, others to early Nikaya teachings, but all remain speculation. This strongly suggests that Ashoka may have been referencing an older, more primitive canon, perhaps belonging to an early Buddhist tradition that disappeared long before the scriptures were formalized. Even more strangely, the text is carved in ancient Prakrit, mixed with unusual grammatical forms not found in other Ashokan inscriptions. Certain words appear in no other edict, hinting that the content may have been drafted by different scribes or within a completely unique context. These linguistic irregularities make philologists question whether the Bairat Edict was created by the standard royal secretariat at all, or by an internal circle, perhaps monks, doctrinal advisors, or a confidential consultative group within Ashoka's court. As scholars study it more closely, additional anomalies emerge. The slab chosen for the inscription seems to have been deliberately smoothed beforehand, but its surface preparation does not match the stone-working techniques typical of the Mauryan Empire. This leads to a fascinating hypothesis: the stone may have been used for a different purpose before the inscription was carved. But for what? A former altar, a religious marker. The foundation of a lost structure no one truly knows. Equally puzzling is its placement in a remote area away from trade routes and not positioned where the public would easily see it. This strongly suggests the edict was not intended for the general population, but possibly for a specific monastic community or a select group of residents. The region of Bairat was once home to a major monastery, the Bairat Mahavihara, an influential religious center in early Buddhism. It is entirely possible that the edict served as an internal doctrinal message directed toward the monks, here meant to correct or safeguard an early version of the teachings that risked being altered as Buddhism spread across the empire. But the greatest mystery, the heart of all scholarly debate, lies in the question: why did Ashoka write such a strange edict at all? Why did he choose content completely different from every other proclamation of his reign? This cannot be dismissed as accidental. This is the deepest point of tension in the religious and political history of ancient India. One theory suggests that Buddhism was beginning to fragment at the time. Monastic groups across different regions were developing their own interpretations, and Ashoka, a recent passionate convert, feared that the teachings would grow inconsistent. In this context, the Bairat Edict may have been Ashoka's attempt to standardize the doctrine and preserve what he believed to be the most original teachings. This would make him not only a royal patron, but an active participant in shaping the movement's doctrinal direction, a controversial and sensitive role historically. A bolder theory argues that the edict is evidence of a lost early Buddhist sect, The Seven Sermons may have belonged to a tradition older than both Theravada and Mahayana. If so, the Bharat Edict becomes a surviving fragment of a religious lineage erased by history, a rare window into teachings that vanished long before later schools took shape. Another possibility is that the Bharat Edict was never a public decree at all. It resembles an internal directive meant for major monasteries, a confidential order placed where ordinary citizens would rarely see it, yet carved into stone, a material reserved for messages of permanent importance. If true Ashoka may have been building a large-scale ideological strategy, establishing a unified doctrinal foundation among elite monks who would then carry a consistent interpretation across the empire. In this scenario, the edict becomes the cornerstone of Ashoka's spiritual governance. Yet the question remains, why was this the only edict of its kind? Why did Ashoka never again issue a doctrinal or scriptural study edict anywhere else? Something must have happened, whether political, religious, or internal, to the monastic community that led him to leave behind only one such document, never repeating the experiment. Even the abrupt disappearance of the ancient population around Bharat deepens the enigma. There is no evidence of war, fire, or natural disaster. They simply vanished, leaving behind a single carved stone and a mystery spanning more than 2 millennia. Thus, the Bharat Rock Edict is far more than a royal decree. It is a message from the distant past, a singular text that breaks every rule of Ashoka's inscriptional tradition, a clue to the diversity or fragmentation of early Buddhism, and the starting point of debates that have never been settled. And perhaps its uniqueness is exactly why it remains so compelling, an ancient mystery still unresolved, forever raising questions about a king determined to shape the Buddhist path, a religion in transformation, and a message delivered only once, then buried in silence for nearly 2,300 years. Nalanda was once the brightest intellectual light of ancient Asia, a place where knowledge, religion, science, and logical thinking coexisted, flourished, and reached an unprecedented peak. Founded in the 5th century under King Kumaragupta of the Gupta Empire, Nalanda was not merely a Buddhist monastery, but the world's first true university, possessing a complete academic system, distinguished teachers, and a massive library that contemporary writers described as shining like a sun of knowledge. With more than 10,000 students and about 1,500 teachers, Nalanda was an international academic hub, where scholars from Tibet, China, Korea, Japan, Sri Lanka, Turkey, and Persia came to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, anatomy, philosophy, linguistics, pharmacology, and the art of healing. All of this made Nalanda a symbol of one of the most brilliant intellectual eras humanity has ever achieved. But the paradox lies here. Such a magnificent center of knowledge with influence spreading across Asia was destroyed almost completely within just a few days, then buried in ashes for centuries. What truly happened at Nalanda? Why did a place representing knowledge, peace, and enlightenment become a target of annihilation? And what was the real motivation behind this tragic event? These very questions have turned the destruction of Nalanda into one of the most debated mysteries in Asian history. What do you think was the real reason behind the destruction of such a great center of knowledge like Nalanda? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Many ancient records describe the event as occurring in the late 12th century during an attack by General Bakhtiyar Khilji of the Delhi Sultanate. However, sources differ so drastically that it becomes difficult to know what truly happened. Some Islamic texts do not mention the destruction of Nalanda at all. Others say Khilji attacked a Buddhist monastery, while Tibetan and Chinese records describe the event with almost surreal brutality. They claim the Nalanda library was so vast that when it burned, the flames continued for 3 months, fueled by countless manuscripts written on palm leaves and oil-soaked paper, creating a fire impossible to extinguish. Imagining this scene, millions of pages stacked inside the three legendary library buildings: Ratnasagara, Ocean of Jewels; Ratnadati, Lake of Jewels; and Ratnaranjaka. Radiance of jewels is enough to show the scale of the loss. Yet the strangest part is this: Khilji's motive for such an act of intellectual destruction remains unexplained to this day. Many theories exist, but none are completely convincing. Some historians believe it was a religious conflict. Khilji, as an Orthodox Muslim, supposedly wanted to destroy a Buddhist center. However, Islamic texts of that era do not describe such hostility, and during other campaigns, Khilji did not target educational institutions. If religion was the main reason, why were other Buddhist centers not destroyed? Why only Nalanda? Another theory claims Khilji mistook Nalanda's monks for sorcerers. According to legend, when he arrived at the monastery gates, he saw scholars dressed in red robes holding ritual texts and assumed they were preparing supernatural magic against his troops. This sounds plausible in a chaotic context, but less convincing when considering the scale of a military operation. Although some scholars suggest that Bakhtiyar Khilji attacked Nalanda for loot, this theory quickly falls apart under scrutiny. Archaeological evidence reveals no treasure or valuable goods, and the palm leaf manuscripts held virtually no economic value for an invading army. The real puzzle is why, instead of seizing the site, the attackers deliberately burned the entire library, an act that offered no material gain but wiped out centuries of accumulated knowledge. This makes the looting motive unconvincing and raises a deeper question: what were they truly trying to destroy? The theory that Nalanda had already declined before the attack is often used to explain its downfall. After the Gupta Empire weakened, financial support dwindled, scholars gradually left the monastery, and academic activity was no longer as vibrant as before. However, a major puzzle remains. If Nalanda was truly in decline, why do Tibetan chronicles describe the attack as an unprecedented catastrophe? And how could a fading institution still possess enough manuscripts to burn for months? These contradictions suggest that the decline theory cannot fully account for the mystery. As scholars delve deeper into the historical evidence, many recognize signs that the destruction of Nalanda may have been part of a deliberate plan, rather than an ordinary military assault. Nalanda was not merely a monastery, but the greatest intellectual center of Buddhism. For 8 centuries, a place that trained scholars and disseminated knowledge across Asia. Some Western researchers suggest that eliminating Nalanda could have been a strategic move to weaken the influence of Buddhism, once a dominant religion in India. Although no direct evidence confirms this theory, it becomes compelling when considering the systematic burning of its vast library, the eradication of scholarly resources, and the complete disruption of Buddhist intellectual traditions. If Nalanda were erased from the map of knowledge, the entire academic network built around it would collapse as well, producing consequences far beyond those of a typical conquest. Archaeological discoveries at Nalanda make the mystery even harder to unravel. Many areas show no signs of fire damage, yet were buried under unusually thick layers of clay, suggesting this was not a natural occurrence. Several structures were built with exceptionally hard, tightly interlocked bricks without the use of mortar, a technique that still astonishes modern architects for its precision and durability. More intriguingly, some scholars believe that after the library burned, someone may have intentionally filled in or covered certain sections as if trying to hide something or protect what remained. These unusual traces only deepen the enigma surrounding Nalanda's collapse, making the story even more perplexing and full of unanswered questions. The surviving monks fled to Tibet, carrying the last surviving manuscripts, preserving a tiny fraction of Nalanda's knowledge. But this accounted for less than 5% of the original collection, meaning 95% of ancient Indian intellectual heritage vanished completely, as if erased from the world. The greatest question behind the entire Nalanda tragedy is this: why would a vast center of knowledge, utterly non-political, without an army, without any pursuit of power, become a target for complete destruction? Nalanda existed solely to teach, to research, and to preserve the intellectual heritage of an entire civilization, so attacking it offered no strategic benefit, no territory gained, no treasure seized, no military advantage achieved. If he had wished, Bhakti Akhilji could have occupied Nalanda as a base or even exploited its immense academic resources. Instead, he chose to eradicate it entirely, an action that required effort yet yielded no practical reward. This irrational decision has led many to suspect a deeper motive, perhaps even a deliberate attempt to prevent the world from ever accessing the vast body of knowledge Nalanda had safeguarded for 8 centuries. It remains the largest gap in the historical record, a question history has yet to answer. To this day, historians remain unable to agree on what truly happened, nor can they determine the true motive behind the destruction. Nalanda is therefore not just a burnt ruin, it is a historical mystery, a reminder that sometimes knowledge and wisdom themselves become targets, and that the destruction of a single library can alter the course of an entire civilization. In the vast Sahara Desert, where scorching winds have swept for thousands of years, and where life is crushed beneath suffocating layers of sand, exists a legend that has captivated the world: Zerzura, the White City. No one knows where it is. No one has ever returned with definitive proof, yet the name Zerzura appears in ancient Arabic manuscripts, in the stories of nomadic tribes, and in the daring expeditions of the 20th century. What is strange is that despite centuries of searching, Zerzura has left behind no clear trace, as if the city does not belong to the world we know. Do you think Zerzura truly existed, or is it just a desert legend? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Zerzura is often described as an absolutely white city, where its walls shimmer under the sunlight, as if carved from ivory or pure marble. Ancient manuscripts portray its entrance as being guarded by mysterious white birds, symbols commonly associated with protective deities and guardian spirits in ancient North African traditions. But what confuses researchers most is the stark contrast between this vivid depiction and the reality of today's Sahara. On one side, a prosperous city filled with springs, vegetation, and abundant life. On the other, an endless sea of deadly barren sand. This contradiction raises the question of whether Zerzura is a surviving memory from a greener Sahara, or the symbolic image of a hidden civilization, someone intentionally concealed beneath layers of legend. In Kitab al-Kanuz, the legendary Book of Treasures, Zerzura appears most vividly as a kingdom buried in time. The text describes it as a place overflowing with gold, jewelry, and artifacts of value far beyond its era, all protected by an invisible guardian whose identity remains unknown. What is striking is that the book paints Zerzura with lavish, almost unreal imagery, yet provides no coordinates or routes leading to it. Every clue is vague and fragmented, leaving readers suspended between believing the city once truly existed and suspecting that the entire tale was crafted to conceal something far deeper beneath its mythic veil. Stories from Bedouin tribes living on the edges of the desert make the Zerzura legend even more gripping. They speak of expeditions that vanished without a trace, with only camels or scattered belongings found in the sand. The Bedouin believe the city has the power to swallow people, and anyone who seeks it without being permitted will never return. What is chilling is that these stories remain consistent, passed down through many generations. In the early 20th century, Western explorers launched daring expeditions deep into the Gilf Kabir region, driven by the belief that they might become the first to reach Zerzura. They discovered 3 strange oases that did not appear on any map of the time, strengthening the theory that this area concealed an entirely uncharted land. Several teams reported seeing white stone walls, ancient tombs, and architectural pillars reminiscent of Egyptian design, yet not fully belonging to it. These half-familiar, half-alien traces suggested that a small, isolated civilization may once have existed on the fringes of the Sahara, leaving behind remnants that modern science still cannot decipher. The area surrounding the suspected location of Zazura has astonished archaeologists with traces that contradict the harsh desert environment of today's Sahara. The most striking evidence lies in the massive murals inside the Cave of Swimmers, depicting humans swimming in water, an impossible scene in a land now so arid that life can scarcely survive. These paintings are more than mere artistic expression. They serve as direct evidence that the Sahara was once a lush region filled with lakes, rivers, and dense vegetation. This discovery supports the theory that the area may have once been home to communities unrecorded by modern history civilizations that could have vanished entirely when the climate shifted dramatically thousands of years ago. The artifacts reportedly found near the suspected region of Zazura have deeply puzzled researchers. Some copper tools display metallurgical techniques unlike any known phase of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship, suggesting an entirely separate tradition of metalworking. Additionally, amulets engraved with strange symbols belonging to no known writing system have been mentioned, along with depictions of human figures with white bird heads, a motif completely absent from regional mythologies. If these objects truly originated from Zazura, then who were its inhabitants, and from what mysterious culture did they emerge? Bedouin legends about the inhabitants of Zazura have long intrigued researchers. They describe the city as being home to light-skinned people with red or blonde hair, whose appearance differed completely from the North African populations of the time. These individuals were said to speak a strange language, neither Arabic nor resembling any known local tongue. Some scholars speculate that they might have been descendants of ancient Libyans, lost Greeks, or an isolated migrant community that vanished due to climatic upheaval. However, all of this remains speculation, as no verified archaeological evidence has ever confirmed their existence. Near the area believed to be the former location of Zazura, researchers discovered Libyan desert glass, a type of desert glass of extremely high purity, formed only under temperatures far beyond any ordinary natural phenomenon. Several pieces of this glass were even found in the jewelry of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, proving it was once considered a rare and precious material. Its presence has led to a bold hypothesis. Could a massive meteor strike or an intense energy explosion have struck this region, incinerating everything and burying the white city of Zazura beneath molten sand and ash? If so, Zazura may have been erased in a single catastrophic moment. Despite centuries of stories, records, and expeditions, the greatest mystery revolves around a simple yet unsolved question. Was Zazura real or merely a legend, born from memories of a greener Sahara, one that nurtured civilizations we can no longer trace? If Zazura was real, why has no confirmed archaeological site been found? If it was only a legend, why do so many sources across different eras describe it in such detail? If it was merely an oasis, why does it bear the characteristics of a city or even a prosperous kingdom? And most importantly, why has no one from Bedouin tribes to modern explorers ever truly found it? This inability to verify the truth makes Zazura one of humanity's most captivating mysteries. It symbolizes lost cities and forgotten civilizations that may have thrived in a green Sahara before disaster war or climate change erased them. And as the Sahara continues to shift and grow harsher, all that remains are ancient texts, scattered tales, and a few hidden oases deep in the desert. Maybe Zazura is just a myth, but maybe it is proof that human history is far deeper, more complex, and more mysterious than we imagine. As Sahara sands continue to blow, and as modern science still fails to uncover what lies beneath its ancient layers, the question of Zazura will persist, challenging us and opening the door to countless theories about civilizations long vanished from our world. Hidden away for over 3,000 years, a fragile sheet of papyrus has shaken modern archaeology to its core. It is known as the Turin Papyrus map, a document so advanced, so impossibly accurate, that many scholars insist it should not exist in the ancient world. Created during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses IV, this map is not a myth, not a ceremonial painting, but a fully functional geological blueprint. In the endless Egyptian desert where civilizations fade into dust, this single papyrus somehow preserves a level of scientific precision that rivals modern satellite imagery. Its lines trace mountains, valleys, riverbeds, and mineral deposits with an accuracy no Bronze Age society was ever supposed to achieve. And so the question emerges colder and sharper than the desert night. Did ancient Egypt possess a scientific knowledge far beyond what history has recorded? Or does the Turin Papyrus map reveal an intelligence that has long been forgotten? What do you think allowed the ancient Egyptians to create a map with such impossible accuracy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Turin Papyrus map is not a ceremonial document. Like many other Egyptian records, it is the first true geological map in human history. On this modest sheet of papyrus, the ancient Egyptians depicted the landscape by separating different types of stone layers of sediment streams and mountain ranges using a unified system of symbols accurate to a degree comparable to geological maps of the 20th century. What makes it even more remarkable is that its creator, the engineer Amenhotep, was not a palace artist, but a mining specialist who conducted direct field surveys. This gave the map a distinctly practical purpose, identifying gold deposits, planning transport routes, and selecting the right stone for royal construction projects. It was never meant as decoration. It was a technical document that reflects the astonishing scientific capability of ancient Egypt. What astonishes scholars most about the Turin Papyrus map is its near-perfect north-south orientation, something a Bronze Age civilization was never expected to achieve. Using only simple tools, sunlight shadows, and natural landmarks, the ancient Egyptians could determine general directions, but achieving a level of alignment that almost matches modern cartography is an entirely different feat. Not only is the orientation correct, but the map also maintains an exceptionally consistent topographic scale. The curvature of valleys, traces of dried riverbeds, and color bands representing different rock types all match astonishingly well with today's satellite images of the Wadi Hammamat region. When archaeologists overlaid the ancient map onto satellite data, they had to admit that the degree of detail-to-detail alignment was nearly inexplicable, almost as if Amenhotep had viewed the entire landscape from above, rather than standing on the ground over 3,000 years ago. The map also displays an excessive level of detail. It shows transportation routes for moving stone from quarries to royal construction sites, marks pathways, identifies rock types such as granodiorite, greywacke, and quartzite, and even notes relative distances and material quality. It was not meant for display, but for actual work. And that raises a mystery. Why was such a technical document created on papyrus and preserved so carefully that it survived millennia? Papyrus is extremely fragile. Most documents of similar age have long disintegrated. Yet the Turin Papyrus map remains nearly intact. Some scholars believe it was stored in a special royal archive where conditions were extremely dry. Others think it was treated as classified material related to gold and stone extraction, one of Egypt's most important economic resources. Wadi Hammamat, the location depicted on the map, once contained gold mines supplying wealth to the crown. The more accurate the map, the more efficient the extraction. One of the most puzzling layers of mystery surrounding the Turin Papyrus map lies in the symbols that have never been fully deciphered. They do not resemble any traditional symbolic system, from ancient Egypt bands of red, yellow, and black, winding curves that look like geological strata, and strange geometric shapes that feel almost like encoded information. This has sparked intense debate among scholars. Are these simply geological representations, or are they a form of resource cipher that the royal court deliberately concealed? Some theories propose that each color band represents the quality of gold, ranging from low-grade deposits to highly pure veins, information that only royal engineers would understand. The fact that these symbols match no known standard suggests that the map may have been an internal document designed for a small circle of specialists rather than the general populace. These enigmatic markings are what give the map both a scientific character and the unmistakable flavor of ancient cryptography. All previously mentioned features are only the tip of the iceberg. What turns the Turin Papyrus map into a true historical enigma is its mind-boggling accuracy, a level far beyond the tools and knowledge recorded in history. How did ancient Egyptians accomplish this? This is the greatest mystery debated for decades. How could a Bronze Age civilization create a map nearly identical to satellite imagery, without instruments, without cartography, without coordinates, and without an aerial viewpoint? Three major hypotheses exist. Some scholars believe that the ancient Egyptians once possessed an advanced surveying system that has completely vanished, far surpassing what is recorded in historical sources. They may have used sun-based angle measuring tools, determined directions through shadow analysis, and built a natural triangulation network using mountain peaks, stone markers, and the horizon line. By tracking fixed celestial points throughout the year, they could have created a stable and repeatable orientation system. When combined with extensive field experience, such techniques might have allowed their maps to reach a level of accuracy that seems unimaginable today. Yet even this ambitious hypothesis fails to fully explain the almost perfect alignment between the ancient map and modern satellite data, a precision that continues to astonish and perplex archaeologists. Another hypothesis suggests that Amenakta's team employed a large-scale topographic surveying method that we still do not fully understand today. They may have divided the Wadi Hammamat region into multiple smaller segments, measuring each section in detail using paced distances, standardized measuring ropes, or simple but highly regulated instruments. These individual data fragments would then be assembled into a unified proportional system, forming the complete map. This approach resembles a kind of proto-geographic information system, a primitive ancestor of modern GIS, suggesting that the spatial reasoning and data organization skills of the ancient Egyptians may have been far more advanced than traditional historical assumptions. Some scholars believe that the extraordinary accuracy of the Turin Papyrus map did not emerge suddenly, but was instead the culmination of a scientific tradition developed over many centuries. Long before the reign of Ramesses, the civilizations along the Nile had already created simple yet reliable surveying techniques used for land division, measuring river levels, and constructing large structures. Generations of earlier engineers may have accumulated knowledge about geology, rock types, water flow patterns, and landscape behavior, passing these insights down through time as a form of ancient experimental science. At the same time, it is possible that entire bodies of technical records have been lost, leaving us with only the final product of a long developmental chain. If this hypothesis is correct, then the Turin Papyrus map represents the most refined achievement of a deep, sophisticated technical tradition that has been largely obscured by time, rather than a miraculous creation from a single generation. Why does the map's accuracy approach that of modern satellite data? No hypothesis, no matter how logical, can fully explain it. The mountains, valleys, riverbeds, and flow directions are so accurate that if someone saw the map without context, they might assume it was a modern reconstruction rather than a 3,000-year-old artifact. Several modern scholars openly admit we do not know how they did it. Some believe ancient Egypt possessed a far more advanced empirical science than modern textbooks acknowledge. Others think an entire system of surveying knowledge may have vanished from history. And some propose that the Turin Papyrus map proves Egypt was a civilization whose scientific abilities remain deeply underestimated, especially in astronomy, geology, mathematics, and engineering. The only certainty is the Turin Papyrus map was not a coincidence. It is the product of knowledge, skill, and observation, yet it still hides secrets we cannot unlock. And perhaps that is why it remains one of the most extraordinary scientific relics of the ancient world.